Everyone, we are on, and I would like to open, excuse me, the agenda for the Georgetown Planning Board January 9th, 2019 meeting. We're in the Memorial Town Hall. We're on the third floor. It is just a few minutes after 7 o'clock. We have minutes, vouchers, some correspondence. We have one item for sureties, Palmer Lane subdivision, followed by an A&R plan, 103 Thurlow Street, zoning board of appeals, next 51 West Main Street, and 3 items, planning office, 2019 online ethics training class. That was an interesting process.
I haven't done mine yet. I promise I'll do it.
Discussion, you're not missing anything. Discussion on 4G technology, I shouldn't say that. Discussion on 4G technology, 111 Thurlow Street, also for the planning office, and then a discussion, a continuation on global warming as it's gonna become part of our regular agenda. With that, I'd like to go to the minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
if you'll hear it, I'll make a motion to approve the December 12th, 2018 minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made and it's been seconded to approve the minutes for December 12th, 2018. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a
Yeah.
couple of, line 87 on the second page. Question is asked, but it doesn't look like there's any answer given.
That was my question too, it being my question.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But I do recall I said there was no plan to pave it. It wasn't
Yeah.
paved.
Just seems like there's a blank there. And
Yeah,
It just
it's-
seems like, I don't know, if that's acceptable. I'm okay with it. I mean, it just
It looks
doesn't.
like just an
It just
oversight, a
doesn't
blank
read,
line,
it just doesn't
extra
read
blank
super.
line.
What was it that you said in the
I asked if the cul-de-sac was currently paved,
And then
it
you-
was no.
And the answer, your own answer was no.
No, they answered no.
Oh, okay.
Answered no, and they said it was not going to be paved.
All right.
No, that's just a driveway.
Yeah, maybe we should just add that in, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Is the board all on board with adding that in? I am. Everybody's all right with that? Yep. Anything else?
I saw nothing.
Okay, seeing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
One abstain.
And 1 abstain. 4 yes, 1 abstain. Moving on to vouchers, there are 5. Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the $215 voucher to Land Law Specialty Publishers for the 2018 subscription to Land Law Reporter.
Second.
Motion has been made and been seconded to approve the voucher to Land Law Specialty Publishers for Land Court Reporter 2018 subscription renewal in the amount of $215. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
5 yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the vouchers. I'm gonna do 2 of them for H.L. Graham Associates Technical Review for 66 Parish Road for $410, and also for H.L. Graham Technical Review for 198 East Main Street, $85, for a total of $495.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion has been made and it has been seconded to approve both vouchers to H.L. Graham Associates, one for technical review for 66 Parish Road and one for technical review for 198 East Main Street in the total amount of $495. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 yes.
Do we want to get the vouchers around? or
Yeah.
start 'em?
Thanks, good.
I make a motion to approve the $3,508.16 voucher for Hayes Engineering, Inc. for professional services at National Avenue, as cited in our packet.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion has been made and it's been seconded to approve the voucher for to Hayes Engineering, Inc. for professional services associated with National Ave A&R in the amount of $3,508.16. Any discussion?
I have one question, and that's if the subscription and if this land use planning law, are those available digitally as well? Or is that hard copy?
Yes.
I think we're talking about
You
the.
you
we're-
skipped
we're-
one, you're on the
That's-
left.
I'm just wondering about.
You're going backwards to the 2 previous.
No, he's going
Jumping
forward.
ahead
He's
to
You're
going
jumping
number
ahead
5.
one, we're not there yet.
We're still on number 4.
Oh,
So hold that thought.
Well, we're
I'm
slow.
trying to just like,
Kind of moving along.
You're
huh?
going too fast.
I
No.
like it.
or too slow.
I had a
love it.
question about
Inappropriate
that,
speed.
You had a question about
Yeah,
number
the
4?
National Avenue one.
Safe and reasonable.
Can you give me some history of that, since
Yeah.
you had to transfer money in, I understood.
Yes, and
Why?
they-
Didn't we have any money in the account?
Really
Well,
not
the Board
enough
of
value
Selectmen, it was initiated by them and they paid for it.
They did.
Yeah, they put money in one of the planning board accounts so that we could pay that surveying bill.
So it's their money, not our money.
Right.
Hence why he was so
I
loose
got
and
you.
free with
Thank you.
making the motion to
Didn't come out
spend
of
it, and me with
So we
second.
still have some money.
Yes, yes.
Any more discussion on that one? Okay, seeing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5 yes. And now we move on to the second voucher. Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the voucher for Walter Kluwer for the handbook of Mass Land Use and Planning Law for the amount of $409.50.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion has been made and seconded to Walter Kluwer for the handbook, Mass Land Use and Planning Law, in the amount of $409.50. Any discussion?
It's the new Bobrowski, right?
Yeah, yeah, this is the book right here.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
That we've been talking about.
Correct, yeah. So it's been delivered, and then there were 3 electronic accounts that are to be set up. I'm sure we'll be able to share, like Netflix.
Netflix, I'd rather the hard
Do you have
copy.
copyright issues that you have to?
Well, I'm just saying, we have 3 electronic access means with the
Got it,
account.
got it.
So, if
they-
everybody wants to go
They're
on.
shareable.
Yeah.
Yes, I got it.
Well,
All right.
But
I'm
you
sure
only
we
have
would
one
never
vote.
use more than 3,
That's right.
ever.
That's
At a
right.
time. Is the Land Court Reporter subscription, is that available digitally too?
Yes.
Okay. That's what, I'm just
Yep.
wondering for access.
Yep.
Cool.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? Any more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moving on to correspondence, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6. There are 2 for the town of Georgetown. And does anyone on the board want to discuss anyone in particular, or just for notification?
I'll make a motion to consider them as read, Mr. Chairman.
Have a second?
Thank you.
Motion has been made and seconded to consider the correspondence, 6 correspondence in our record as read. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
What I'd like to do, if the board is in agreement, is where we have discussion on global warming as the last item under member of public's concern, I would like to bring it up and introduce it now and hold on to it in this spot on a regular basis on our meetings. And I do so because of, one, to take advantage of people who are here, who typically aren't here at the end of a meeting, and also to take advantage of people who might be tuning in at the beginning of our meetings and who typically aren't at the end of our meetings. So, and I can assure you, this line item is not gonna be anything any more than a 15-minute line item each meeting we do cover it, so at least for tonight, is the board okay if I move that one forward?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So, what, so I've been in contact, with the selectmen, by phone, and without getting into any details, I was notified yesterday that they aren't gonna have us come before them to present to them about global warming.
They are not.
They do not wanna hear
They
it?
do not wanna hear it. So, that was.
Did they offer any reason?
Well, it was informal discussion, and the two reasons that I could take away from the conversation was, one, it would set a precedent, which I don't agree with, and 2, it was not, and this is, I'm now paraphrasing, but it was not germane to the city, to the town of Georgetown per se, that it belonged at a global issue. And I couldn't disagree more on that fundamental. For me, it's really the fear of the conflict that could arise out of this kind of a discussion. That's my take on why it doesn't want to go, but that's just my opinion. So that said, I did notify them that we would be submitting a letter from the planning board officially requesting to come before the board to present a quick overview of the latest data on global warming. And so basically all I'm asking, if the board is okay, that they allow myself to work with John to just craft a paragraph, and it's just to make it an official request to the selectmen to come before them to present the subject and get that ball rolling as to what we're trying to do. So that's sort of all that I had to say about this right now, the subject tonight. And
Well, if I may,
please.
I strongly agree that there is a problem. But I don't see in what you presented, what will our goal be and how do we accomplish it? That's where I'm losing it.
And as you should, and as you should, because that's the next part, Tilly, that has to get crafted. The message basically is twofold, and it should be in writing, and perhaps I owe that to you folks also. In fact, I know I do. So that question is excellent.
Thank you.
That question is excellent. To be very clear on what the agenda is, and that'll get fleshed out, because it has to be fleshed out, because the selectmen need to know the same reason.
Gotcha.
So,
I do think that, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of data that, there's the IPCC document, I mean, but I don't think, I don't really know, do we need to convince them that global climate change is an issue, or is it a question of it's an issue, but it's too big for us to deal with? Now, I understand it is too big for us to fix. However, there are things I think that the town can look at that,
Everybody needs to do their part.
right, we have departments, Park and Rec can
It's
look
a-
into it, the
it's a-
cops can look at it.
it's clear that this is gonna be a bottom-up effort.
Grassroots, basically.
It's clear.
Yeah.
There is absolutely zero political will in this country and across, in the other major nations that are the main cause of the problem. So with that said, it's the old think global, act local. And that's what the planning board is about for this town. And it's not about convincing anybody of the data. It's about simply saying, look, here's the data. The science is over. You either believe it or you don't. I'm not here to argue it one way or the other. But now you have the data. And so A, there's a responsibility that comes with it, and that's the broad brush of it all. And B, what I would like to do, and this I haven't figured out the wording for it, but what I would like to do is the goal would be to bring to the floor of the Georgetown annual town meeting some bylaw that simply, even if it's nothing more than it says the town of Georgetown accepts and supports the 2018 IPCC report. Even if it's nothing more than that, but it's gotta start somewhere, it's gotta start small. I've never done this before, I'm trying to figure it out myself, but to get the town to start talking about it and start realizing that when you go and vote, it's not just about voting for self-interest anymore. It's about voting for the future interests, and that's another topic, but that's what it's about. Yeah.
Rob, is that a bylaw or more a resolution?
Resolution.
A resolution?
Resolution.
Okay, because I'm looking at this and I realize I'm one person, we're one board, we're one community. We really are not gonna reverse global warming. But I think as a town, we can recognize that it's coming. Sounds like the resolution. As a board, I think we have a duty to see the coming storm and be smart enough to realize that rain intensity is going up.
Correct.
That's just quantifiable data, you can look at the charts.
Correct.
We need to change our stormwater calculations to utilize the newest numbers that are out there. Can't use numbers from 1960 anymore to size stormwater management facilities.
Or 1990.
And
We need new ones,
We need
and
new
that's
ones.
still, and we've
Couldn't
already
agree
taken
more.
that step.
And you guys are
We're
working
beginning
on
on
that.
that.
Right.
And the other thing that a planning board can do is, we can, yes, we're working from the ground up here, but a little higher up than us, there is some help, there's a handhold. The Baker administration has it's called the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. And it's much like Green Communities, it's a program, there are grants available. John can probably tell us a heck of a lot more about it. Maybe not tonight,
Not
maybe that's
tonight.
somewhere in the future, but
Yep.
there are grants there for culvert replacement, flooding, storm damage, things such as that. And I think as a planning board, even other departments have their priorities and the directions they wanna go. But the planning board should be looking at that, I believe. That's one of the things we should be looking at for the community.
That's part of planning.
I think
part-
it's
and
smart
that's-
planning.
That's the specific.
Smart planning, yes.
Yeah, and I guess that's right on, Harry. It's, that kind of discussion needs to be part of what I'm gonna write that goes to our request to the selectmen, why we're going in front of them. And the other part is that the grassroots, you know, the vision that I have is that Georgetown does this. Georgetown says, look, you know, we're not just gonna sit back. We're gonna join, we're gonna speak up. And then next thing you know, we talk to Newbury, and Newbury joins us. And then Rowley,
Absolutely.
and then Rowley joins us.
You
And I'm
need
sure
to
there are,
engage the
probably are
state
other towns that are
and-
already started.
I know there are.
Right.
I know there are. And so then you start to build up a little body of power where then the politic in Massachusetts, although we're in Massachusetts, which is very different than the rest of the country.
We're our own animal.
But nonetheless, we have a responsibility. I'm just, you know, we do. It's an absolute responsibility. Anyone that says it's not part of our realm, whatever.
I agree with you. We need to engage at the state level with neighboring communities and within the community for the larger businesses in the community to just see what we can do.
Yeah.
Businesses,
Plastics is a
residents.
big issue.
Residents are coming, I mean, we're
So-
before cameras tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, open it up to the public. I mean, if other boards aren't in a position to be a clearinghouse for good ideas, I mean, there's a lot of good ideas out there.
You got it.
Folks can contact the planning office, write the board, write a letter, send an email,
Yell at us.
make a phone
Yeah,
call.
Sure.
If you have a great idea, something we can do, let's move on. I mean, there's more than two things that we can do. We've only figured out two of them, but at this
So-
point, two or three.
So I'd like to end the discussion now on this for now, and yeah, please, John.
As I said earlier, for our next meeting, to be progressive on this issue, I did invite Neil Duffy. He's the regional coordinator for Green Communities.
Great.
Oh,
And anybody's listening, Green Communities Division of the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. This division provides grants, technical assistance, and local support from regional coordinators to help municipalities reduce energy use and costs by implementing clean energy projects in municipal buildings, facilities, and schools. So that's right in line with the whole thing of
Yeah.
becoming green and creating less of a carbon footprint, which is all good towards
Another
reducing
step we can-
global warming.
Another step we can take.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that, very much. And then, we're gonna move on to the sureties, Palmer Lane subdivision. John, you wanna just,
Yes, because the applicant wasn't able to make it to this meeting, and in addition to the surety reduction request, there's also an issue that we have to resolve having to do with the affordable housing, and that would be an in lieu of payment, and the applicant's ready to handle that particular issue, but they'd like to be here, so if the board would make a motion to continue till the next meeting, that'll be fine. That's for Palmer.
motion?
I'm recused, remember?
I didn't,
Pomerlee?
I didn't, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do now.
This is Palmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a continuance date, or is it just?
Yes,
the
it
next-
would be January 23rd, our next planning board meeting.
They are requesting, so
Yes.
we're moving to approve their request
Yeah.
to continue the hearing for Palmer, for their surety reduction to 23 January.
Perfect.
A second.
Motion has been made and it's been seconded to continue the hearing for Palmer Lane subdivision reduction in surety to the January 23rd, 2019 meeting. Any discussion?
Even though I'm recused, is it technically a hearing?
No, it's just,
The business matter,
Thanks,
right?
yeah.
Business matter, revised to business matter.
Yep.
So we don't need to continue anything.
Well, it's not gonna hurt. It's not gonna hurt, he's accused. Any more discussion? No more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
4 yes, 1 abstain,
Thank you.
or 1 recused. Okay, so moving on to
Sorry,
the
trying to suck me
A
in.
and R plan, 103 Thurlow Street.
Yes, and the applicant is here this evening, Bob Grasso, surveyor for the property. Just to refresh board members, this is the A and R plan subsequent to the amended subdivision plan of last month. So this is what we've been expecting.
For the record, my name is Bob Grasso from Engineering Management.
Ian, Bob.
This is 103 Thurlow Street.
Yeah.
Parcel, lot 78. It's map 12, lot 78. The whole lot is right here shown in orange, and we're trying to, proposing to do is break this into 2 lots with sufficient frontage and sufficient area. Lot 78, which would be the original lot, is shown right here, and that has 160.99 feet, which is 160 is required, and it has an area of 40,053 square feet, which is 40,000 is required. Also, the lot width is in the front, 30 feet back is 120 is minimum. We have 202.51 from here to here. And the lot depth on the 150-foot setback is the minimum would be 40 feet wide, and we have 204. The second lot would be lot 78A. That total frontage would be 173.86 from this point to the middle of the curve on the modification of that subdivision plan that was previously approved in the last hearing. The lot width, the lot depth on that lot would be, minimum setback at 30 feet would be 120, we have 121. And at 150, we have the minimum 40 feet, and we have 50.52. So it meets the frontage, area, and access on a public way.
Okay. Going around the board, any questions? Harry, you wanna-
I'm ready to make a motion to endorse. The only thing that's bothering me is right smack in the middle of that new created lot.
Yeah.
This is 78A. It says parcel B.
Yeah,
Not a
that
buildable
was,
lot.
because we're combining parcel A, which was off that modification plan. That's parcel A, that's gonna be added to this parcel B by itself. It's a non-buildable lot, but with this lot added with parcel A, it would have sufficient frontage in
But
here.
wasn't that already done in the previous one?
Yes,
So
so I'm adding
why
parcel,
are we still calling it parcel B?
because that wasn't approved, it's still, it's not signed as the appeal period is now up.
Right.
And it's, hasn't been signed by the planning board.
Oh, we didn't
Oh,
endorse that yet?
We didn't
Yeah.
finalize it,
We didn't
okay.
finalize
So
I
that's
thought we
why-
did, okay, all right. That's-
Okay,
So I have to, I can't,
okay,
I can't.
okay. I understand the situation.
We
It's just-
we
it's just a
we
little bit
amended
confusing.
the previous
Yes,
subdivision.
I meant the
Yeah.
modification to that subdivision, we had, just took up that
Okay.
parcel.
This is,
We're
Just
moving
the-
fast.
It's just that hasn't signed.
Right, I get it, it's just a little bit confusing looking at it,
Yeah,
because, you know, it's saying
well,
3,800, not buildable.
well, that's why I put the formula up there, parcel B plus parcel A equals the total area, which is that all total together. And the top of that.
any other questions from anyone on the board? I don't have any
That's
questions.
so confusing. I'm sorry, can you go over that again, or?
Sure.
You're
um,
creating frontage, yes, no?
Yes, on the previous hearing, I did a modification of the subdivision plan on this, and we broke off this parcel A off the subdivision. And so we added it to, we made this lot, the original lot is the stone wall right here, right? So we took that parcel A and added it to this lot. Now we have two lots, two conforming lots with frontage and area.
And the houses are gonna be right down by the,
No, the proposed house would be up here, that would be on the
so
septic.
how do they get to that house?
This house?
The one in the back?
This one?
No?
No, the one you're creating.
Yeah,
one
there we go,
created?
there we go. How do you get
Okay.
there?
With a driveway right up to,
Driveway.
yeah, driveway. Has frontage and area, it's a Form A lot, just a driveway. We're not creating a roadway.
That's
it's
the
a-
only house that's gonna be there all the way around?
Yeah, right up here.
So there's nothing down here and close to the street?
Right here is an existing dwelling, that's 103, that's the original lot,
That's the
house for
old
the
one.
original, for the whole area.
That's not. Is this gonna be a common drive? Is that what you're?
No, they'll have their own driveway, right here, coming off of Thurlow Street.
So you'll have an existing house on the.
Has their
right-
own driveway,
Just
Right.
point,
right here,
Bob, if you just point to, yeah, just
Yeah.
point to that existing house.
right here,
So
his-
that's one lot.
and that's their existing driveway right now.
Existing drive, and then there'll be another
There'll be-
driveway.
We're proposing on a driveway right here, right up through the lot, and the house will sit approximately right here.
It's just that house, the new house will be further back.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, it's
In back
a
of this
very
house,
big lot. I
Yeah.
mean, you only need 40,000 square feet,
How
and
much
there's
is,
over
how
130.
what is the dimensions on that street for
It's,
the frontage?
For this lot is 160.99, which is, you only need 160, so I went almost a foot over. just to be
Okay.
safe.
And the other
Well, it's
one?
on a curve. And the other one would be 173.86, so we're at 13.
And it's still on Thurlow Street?
Yes, yes.
Still, or you're going around and creating?
Half the curve, right there.
You're stopping right at the curve,
Half the curve.
half of the curve?
Yeah, when you're on an intersection, you get to claim half of a curve.
That's correct. It's true. It's true.
It's common practice.
The last meeting.
I guess you did.
We-
Sorry.
Perpendicular lines.
And I will say, it is confusing, Tilly. It was confusing to the
If
board
I
last
explained
time.
it at the last hearing, but.
Yeah, yeah.
She wasn't here,
exactly.
so that's okay.
No, that's it, yeah.
Oh, that's right, you weren't here, that's right.
You didn't
Mr.
miss
Chairman,
me?
if you will.
Bob? You didn't miss me?
Well, it's been years. It's,
Okay, so, any other questions? Nope, Harry?
If you'll hear it, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to endorse the A&R plan of land located in Georgetown, Mass. 103 Thurlow Street, Georgetown, Mass. Lot 78, 78A, parcel A and B. Date, December 19th, 2018, drawn by Engineering Land Services LLC, and with Robert Grasso stamp.
I second.
Motion has been made and it's been seconded to endorse the A&R plan, application for 103 Thurlow Street, map 12, lot 78A, plan entitled Plan of Land located in Georgetown, Mass. 103 Thurlow Street, lots 78 and 78A, parcel A and B, prepared by Engineering Land Services, West Newbury, Mass, dated December 19th, 2018. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
5 yes. Thanks.
Joe, when will that be signed?
Tonight. This
Did you bring a pen?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's right there. There's a pen.
Oh, okay.
There's only,
Yeah, you know,
Is there a way I can,
I mean,
oh, for the town clerk, so can I pick it up tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yep.
I'll pick it up tomorrow.
all right. So now we're moving on to 51 West Main Street.
Okay.
Yeah, Sedler. Have they moved out of there?
This is very interesting.
Because I thought they like lived behind me or part of the house. I don't know.
Evidently they sold it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, evidently it's been sold, from what I saw.
Maybe they went to senior housing, which they should have gone to senior housing.
Yeah, because I saw a deed. I swear I saw a deed. I don't know what the date of the deed was, though.
It had to be fairly recent, because it was only closed by about 6 months ago. I don't remember seeing a for sale sign.
Perhaps a little time, maybe quietly done. I'm sorry.
John, this is a meeting for discussion of the zoning board of appeals, ZBA 51 West Main Street project. If you'll give a brief overview, and then we'll go to the applicant.
Okay. As stated in the staff report for this evening on this particular project, this is the ZBA special permit application, and the planning board's role at this point in time is to add input on this application to the ZBA, and that's in accordance with the zoning requirements. The applicant is here this evening to give a full presentation. It calls for 51 West Main Street, which is locally known as Settlers Antique Village, for the main building to be remodeled. Some of the building would be demolished, but a main portion of that building would be remodeled, and as proposed in this application, it would possibly be used for retail, office space, and/or restaurant use. And then the second phase of the project calls for 7 townhouses to be built in the rear of the property. And down in the rear of the property, there is a substantial wetland that will involve the Conservation Commission's review in possible order of conditions with their application concerning the Conservation Commission. After the ZBA input, and if they're successful with the project with the ZBA, they would come to us with the site plan application.
So with that, I'd like to open it to the applicant. If you, for the record, can introduce yourself. Even though
Thank
we
you
know
very much. Thank you. Pleasure to be back. My name is Nancy McCann, and I'm here tonight with the applicant, John Colantoni, and Quality Development LLC. They are the owners and the applicants for this property at 51 West Main Street. Also here tonight is John Duggar, who is the project architect. The project engineer, Thad Berry, is in a neighboring community and may make it here before we finish this discussion. But what we wanted to present to you tonight is this application, and I think it's a pretty exciting one as these applications go, to give us an opportunity to renovate the Settlers Antique site, which you're all, I'm sure, very intimately familiar with. That property was sold to the applicant earlier, end of last year, I guess. The property is about 1.7 acres. And the front of the building, I'm sure that you're familiar with. And then there's a very large area to the rear that has some wetland area, but a lot of open area as well. This is the existing conditions plan. It shows you the existing settlers building out front. It shows some various outbuilding types of parcels, types of buildings and structures that are located back in there, some trailers and things. And the site, if you haven't been in the back of the site and all you've seen is the front, you're missing quite a bit of it, because there's a good deal in the back and it's in need of some significant attention. So what we're proposing is a true renovation of this site, and retention, maintenance, and restoration of the original antique settlers building. And it was built mid-1800s. The applicant has worked with the Georgetown Historic Commission, began that process some months ago, and you do have, as part of the package, if you do have the whole package, there is a letter from the Historic Commission. really complimenting the applicant on the work that was done prior to even starting this application process. So what's being proposed is a removal of the back portion of the existing building and a restoration of the front portion. A restoration and cleanup in the rear of the lot, as well as the construction of 7 townhouse style units at the back. So this is the existing conditions plan. The proposed looks like this. This is the existing antique structure that will be completely renovated and brought up and back to its original glory. The rear portion, quite a large area, will be removed, and a relatively small addition will be placed on the back of the existing settlers building. And this building will be used entirely for commercial purposes. What those purposes are right now, we don't know. Could be retail, could be office, could be a restaurant, small type of restaurant. Parking calculations have been based on the most intensive type of use that could go in here, and we're proposing 22 parking spaces to accommodate for this building. Then we have the construction of 7 townhouse style buildings. Under the Georgetown zoning bylaw, that's referred to as an apartment house under zoning, and it requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals. This building is fully conforming with all of the dimensional requirements, and we're proposing a total of 7 units, 2 3-bedroom units, 5 2-bedroom units. Again, meeting all of the dimensional requirements. 2 parking spaces are provided per unit, plus we're proposing 5 guest parking spaces. So we have plenty of parking spaces for these residential units. The access into the site that's being proposed is an entrance in here and 2 exits, one going left, one going right, coming out here. So we have 2 exit lanes and 1 entrance in lane. This entrance in is going to accommodate the entrance for the commercial space, as well as coming straight back to serve the residential. The residential exit is one way exiting out here. Now, of course, residents could also exit out this way as well, but there will be an exit out, one way only out in that direction. So the internal circulation works out quite well. Adequate parking and good internal circulation. The buildings itself, this is the rendering that we have of the renovated Settlers building. This is a photograph before the leaves fell off of the existing Settlers building. So it is a restoration of what is there and a maintenance of that existing antique. The townhouse style buildings are designed, and again, the architect is here this evening, but it's been designed to be in keeping with the architectural style of the former Settlers building.
May I ask what view that is?
This is a view that would be from right about here on the property looking back. Part of this site, as we mentioned earlier, and as John mentioned, we do have wetlands on the site. We have had a resource area delineation done by the Conservation Commission, so our wetland line has been set. And we are proposing work that would be within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction, so a notice of intent will be required. Part of this project is a restoration of the wetland area and really a total cleanup of this area. And as I said, if you just do a drive-by and you haven't been in the back, I have some photographs that I think might be interesting for you to take a look at.
Nancy, even though it's Concom's jurisdiction, can you just explain what the colors, if they are coded to mean anything, the green, those different greens, do they mean anything?
This is the wetland boundary.
That's the
Dark
wetland edge?
green.
Okay,
This is a pond area in here. So this is the wetland boundary, and this is the 100-foot buffer in red,
okay, got it.
Where's the 100-foot? Could you show me that again?
right here.
So that, the other one's the
So
50.
you're,
So what are the, why are there two different shades of green?
Wetland,
Yeah.
buffer zone,
Oh, the buffer's the green, okay.
and the pond area.
This is where you can see it better
Oh,
here.
yeah, yeah,
oh, thank you very much.
all right,
Yeah.
That's the 100-foot buffer line.
okay, yep. So that was just, thank you,
The,
continue.
the red
I'm
line
sorry.
is the 100 though.
Red line is the 100.
Red line's 100.
I think when you take a look at the pictures, you'll be able to see that part of the discussion with the Conservation Commission is going to be the restoration of the wetland areas. A lot of this that's located on the site now is within buffer, and it's not attractive and not nice, and really has been quite degraded. Much of this area was paved already. And we've got gravel showing here as well as pavement within this area, so, much disturbance has already taken place in the back. And we think that this project gives us the opportunity to really make something much more attractive and more beneficial to the wetland, and really enhance the wetland that we have.
There's no date on those pictures, Bill.
They were today.
They're
I
today?
believe.
Oh, okay.
John took them today or within the last week?
They're all today except the first one.
This one, which I don't think I handed around. This,
Okay.
obviously with the leaves still on, it was not today. The rest of them were taken today. Again, we've met with the Historic Commission. You do have their letter in the file. We also met with the Economic Development Committee. And their letter, which you should have in the file. They do have that?
Yep.
Okay. Dated December 11th, indicates that, and I will just quote it, that this is a very important and longstanding goal of our community is to preserve and protect historically significant dwellings and commercial buildings, especially within the downtown areas of Georgetown. In this regard, the potential subdivision rehabilitation and the reuse of the former settlers' antique village property into the subject retail townhouse development represents an important example of further attaining said goal. So, that's certainly a benefit of this particular project. We do need zoning relief, and review from the Board of Appeals, and that includes a special permit for the townhouse, the townhouses, which are again referred to as an apartment house under the zoning bylaw.
And that's, just to clarify, that comes from the ZBA.
Correct.
Okay.
All of the zoning relief will come from the ZBA.
Yeah, we
Of-
can't help you with that.
You can't, but you'll get your chance with site plan approval, because that is absolutely what will be part of this project, of course. The other permits that we will be looking at from the Board of Appeals will be a special permit to allow a second structure on the lot. An interesting provision, not frequently seen under zoning bylaws, is the requirement of a special permit for having more than one building on a lot, and that's part of your bylaw. We are constructing the new townhouse building, as you can see, is more than 10 feet from the front lot line. This is very peculiar provision in the zoning bylaw. I understand the reasoning for it, but in this particular zoning district, newly constructed buildings cannot be more than 10 feet from the front lot line. Well, in this case, we're seeking zoning relief to allow the townhouse buildings to be located in this area. In the back, we have over an acre of land in the back that would not be available for development without that zoning relief. The purpose, as best we can surmise, and I think I've talked to John about this, and I've talked to the building inspector about this, the purpose for this provision of the bylaw, as you probably know, is to prevent gaps in the streetscape. And having, along your main street, having buildings, new construction, set way back and maybe parking in the front, or what looks to be a vacant space as you're traveling down the street. We don't have that here because we have the existing Settlers building. So the intent of the bylaw is met here, but we do need the zoning relief to allow a newly constructed building to be set more than 10 feet back from the front lot line. So that's what we're looking for. And again, we'll have to go through site plan review. I have floor plans here. I have the building elevation drawings, which were part of your packet, but I think the renderings that we have are a little more descriptive, perhaps, for this discussion. We think it's a very good development, and brings some residential units into the downtown area. 7 units total, again, 2 3-bedroom and 5 2-bedroom units. We have adequate parking. We have adequate circulation for traffic. We have adequate utilities. We're not overloading any utilities, any municipal services. And we think this is an excellent use of this particular property and gives us the opportunity to preserve a historic structure as well as restore some wetland areas. So that is the proposal.
Thank
I'd be
you.
happy to answer any questions.
First, if just there was anyone from the public that had any questions, be happy to entertain them right now. And if not, I guess what I would offer to the board is that, so this is the first time we've seen this project, and this is a good time to ask basic questions that you may have about the project. It's not the time to get into trying to figure out details and resolve them now. John, what's sort of the punchline to today's meeting in terms of what you're looking for?
Now,
In
the
terms of the motion or no
ZBA's,
motion?
well, the ZBA's initial public hearing is set for the 24th
No,
of,
1st of February.
1st of February.
I think it's February 4th, perhaps, something like that.
Okay.
But their February meeting,
All right.
beginning of the month.
So, and our next meeting is January 23rd. You know, if we wanted to put time into reviewing the proposal and then, say, continuing our review at the next planning board meeting.
Would that get our recommendation to them in time?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sure this is gonna be
mean-
long, so I don't think we have to meet that.
sure.
Yeah.
So I
This is gonna be long.
so I think that makes sense. Okay, all right. With that, what I'd like to do, and Tilly, if you wanna start, and then we'll just go around the board, I'll go
Yeah,
last in terms
I'll
of basic
come right to the
questions.
chase. Thank you. Why isn't this a 40B?
Why isn't it a 40B?
Right?
Well, I believe Georgetown is over its 10%, is it not?
It is.
40B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just not the desire of the developer to put in a high-density project here. And potentially, although you can do a mix commercial and residential 40B, they're certainly less common. And we wanted to maintain the commercial use out front in keeping with the zoning district's uses along those lines and the historic use of the structure. So, market rate project with not a high density was really what was
Well,
the applicant's
The letters that
desire.
I received, I think we all got them. I think last meeting you might have gotten some. Right on the top, I think it was economic development, and then it was the affordable housing group. Right, they labeled it as a 41B lip. And they wrote that they were supportive of it. So
I
what's
don't
going
know-
on here?
I don't know what you're referring to.
I'm not-
Please
I'm not-
I saw-
clarify that for me.
You're thinking 34 Main, 34 East Main,
You're thinking
34
of,
East Main, I think you're thinking of.
you're thinking of,
I think you're thinking of 34 East Main.
Is that the Olson?
The Olson,
You're thinking of-
I think, yeah, I think that's what you're thinking of.
I saw this, did we get any letter, can I see those letters, because they're not in this
No, there's
packet.
attached letters, and they're part of attachment A. One is from the Georgetown Historic Commission, and the other one is from the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, because this is the first that we're seeing of this,
correct.
for this particular project.
In the, just to summarize, in the Historic Commission letter that was authored by longstanding Board of Selectmen Philip Trapani, what he cites throughout his letter is the importance of helping to preserve the scale and character and architectural appeal of
Right.
existing buildings, and this is probably one of the most significant historic structures with a long history of
Okay.
being a prominent
It's still in
dwelling.
downtown.
Some of the older photos, if you ever had a chance to see some of the older photos, incredible dwelling.
Yeah, they all burned down, yeah.
Yeah, very expansive. But this is an opportunity to rehab and preserve that particular structure, a main portion of it, and at the same time make it all economically feasible. And the only way to make anything like this economically feasible, you have to usually have an expansive element to it, and that would be the proposed townhouses. Those come into play, and the Economic Development Committee recognized that, along with the Historic
Right.
Commission.
Right.
Longstanding goal of Georgetown is to introduce quality housing in the immediate downtown area.
Can I see that letter from?
Sure.
Because Olson is old, so that didn't get into,
No, there's been no discussion whatsoever about this project being a 40B
No, I
or a
mean-
LIP.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's it? This is the only correspondence?
No, and this is the,
I read that, Phil's. Okay,
that was my letter.
yeah, here it is, here, regarding. This is from, you. Right? You wrote this, Settlers Village Retail Townhouse Development, 34 East Main Street, dash.
Oh, 34.
Oh,
That's why.
Local
No
initiative.
wonder you got it from there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
cut and
How come you
spliced.
got,
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Tilly, one thing for
Losing it.
sure, you can't,
I'm losing it.
one thing for sure, you cannot get anything by even mistakes. So what I did was, I wrote that, you're the first one to pick up on
I
it.
caught it.
But it should be 51 West Main Street.
Well, the reason that
Okay, so
Mr.
that's
Olson.
settled.
Oh my
So,
God.
never mind on
Moving
that,
on.
so.
Nancy, you didn't
moving
pick up
along.
on that
I
mistake?
saw
Moving
Settlers
right.
Village.
Can I
and
follow
said,
through
okay.
again?
Yes.
The reason that Mr. Olson had to do the 40B lip, or it was his choice to do it, was because of the $10,000 square feet CBA requirement.
Mhm.
Why isn't yours also required?
They got a bigger lot.
We meet the requirement.
You meet the lot, but the lot is unbuildable. It's not continuous building area because we just changed that bylaw to be very clear that it cannot be wet. So you have all dry land for 7,000.
The building inspector has reviewed this, and we provided him with the calculations, and his determination letter is here as well in this package. And we do meet the requirement for the area for the 7 townhouses.
So where is
Originally,
that on this map that I can kind of get an eyeball?
71,000.
71, is that the whole lot or is that
square
just?
feet of upland
right,
for the lot area in the lower right-hand corner.
So all of the,
there is
Somebody can-
76,729 square feet of land area. There is 4,775 square feet of wetlands.
Which is
So we have
this
more.
dark blue.
that's,
Correct.
yeah.
So we have more than 70,000 square feet, which
Let me-
is what
let me
we're
just-
required to have.
Let me just
To
qualify,
support.
correct. if I'm not mistaken, Nancy, this is your edge of wetland.
Correct,
This is your wetland.
right,
This is setback. This is a
Correct.
50-foot, then there's a 100-foot.
That's right.
So when you're talking about 4,700 square feet of wetland, that's that.
that's that, correct,
And then you have 1.6 acres.
right.
Only .121 is legit wetlands out of our 1.761. Only
This,
.121.
this
Right.
figure
I see
here.
it, yeah.
Right.
So
of that.
I think, I'm not, I don't have my calculator here, but my gut tells me they meet.
They're meeting it.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
And if they don't, that's a problem.
no, we do, and the building, as I said, the building inspector has reviewed that, and the wetland line has been set by the Conservation Commission.
And we are taking into account the existing building, right? We have 7
Yes.
townhouses, that's 10,000
Correct.
each.
Correct. There is not an
Plus.
additional area required for the commercial
Existing?
building,
Oh, okay.
and we have reviewed that.
Oh, okay.
That was the
That's why you
first thing
make
we
it. Okay,
reviewed with
that's
the
why you
building
make it.
inspector,
Okay.
because we actually wanted to have a few more units in the back.
Ah.
And then we went through the calculation.
Okay.
So, with a couple more minutes, Tilly, trying to give each person 15 minutes. Do you have anything else for now?
No, yeah, I'll pass.
Okay.
Yeah,
John?
I just really want to clarify that when I wrote the correspondence for 34E, and I grabbed that as my footprint,
you a
my
hug.
template. Yeah, so that,
Okay.
you can offer my condolences to me. It's so wrong, but that's where that came. This project has never been discussed as a 40B, and if it was,
Never, okay.
it would have been introduced in that manner.
This is a lot of,
John, let me tell you a story. So I was presenting, I was on
Gonna
their,
have a sip of
I was on
coffee.
their side of the table once, and I was presenting a project to another planning board. And I'm up there with these drawings, and I'm talking about it's this square footage, it's this square footage, it's this square footage. And towards the end, someone similar to you said, excuse me, I think there's something wrong. Long story short, I was 50% off on the scale with everything I was saying. 50%. 50%. Oops. You talk about, so anyways.
Yeah, it hurts.
Moving on.
But you get
It
over
happens.
it.
It happens.
Everybody gets a swing and a miss every now and
well,
then.
they may be back because there's a lot of approvals
Now,
that they need.
and then, Rob, I just want to really point out too, I came here in February of 2016, and the review for this project actually began at that point in time. And I would say for zoning determination purposes only, Les has actually been wrestling with this project and, refining it, and we've had probably 5 staff meetings on this, and going back and forth with the zoning. So if there's any project that's received the most incredible zoning
Scrutiny?
scrutiny and determination, this is it. And there's a lot,
Yeah.
as you can see in his
Yeah, they could be
determination.
back with a lift.
So with that, Bob, do you have any questions at this point?
I love this, I do. So this is within the buffer, right? Everything
Correct.
that's here, so you're gonna need to make friends on that one.
Yes, sir.
The flow is through here, and it's one way? Is
No,
that the idea?
it's 2 ways that way.
Here, we have one, it's hard to see the arrows here. We have an entrance here, and we have 2 exit lanes coming out here. So this is a full movement curb cut, in and out, all right? This is the only entrance in. And
I
that
see.
entrance
Yep.
in is going to serve the commercial, and then it's going to go straight back to the residential. And then we have a left turnout lane and a right turnout lane. And then we have just an exit coming out here, and that's going to be primarily for the residential folks, so they don't have to intermingle with the.
Yeah, reduce the.
So they can go out on their own and.
Correct.
Gotcha, okay, that makes sense.
And the property is existing now has 3 curb cuts. So it's not like we're adding large footage of curb cuts.
You're right,
Nice.
they're there, not used, but they're there,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that's not within our jurisdiction, but the reason why they're even proposing that wetland buffer impact is because of the existing. And that can't be
Yeah.
not emphasized enough, that there is a significant amount of buffer impact on that property to begin with. And part of the initial discussions with the developer was to make sure that that wetland body is actually enhanced when it's all said and done, if and when this project moves forward. So there's some give and take being recognized in accordance with that wetland.
Knowing the Conservation Commission as I do, I'm confident that this is in the, that if this goes through, it is in the best interest of the improvement to this area, this wetland. I'm confident of that. Bob, do you have any other?
The only other comment I had is that it looks narrow, and I don't know if that's, I'm looking at that car, getting in there. It looks narrow, but I can't.
It's gonna be at least 24 feet
Cool.
for the two-way. It's what we'll also have to, as part of site plan approval, make sure we have circulation for emergency vehicles, et cetera, which this has been set up to do that.
Harry? I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay, Harry?
Nancy, how many parking places per unit do you have?
2.
And am I seeing, I see a
One interior,
one inside and one outside.
one outside, and then we also have 5 guest parking spaces.
Right, up and.
Right.
Okay. Refresh my memory. North, who's your neighbor to the north there? Is that Eagle Building? Is that the Eagle Building, or
Next
am I,
door,
am
yeah.
I wrong?
Yeah.
It is the Eagle Building?
Yeah,
If you're looking at it from the street, the Eagle Building's on your right.
yeah.
On the left or the right?
As you're walking into,
This way.
as you're walking into Settlers, on the right is the Eagle
Yeah,
Building.
it's at the bottom of this.
Who's to the left
It's over
then?
here.
That's just a residence.
It's a residence, but commercially, yeah, it's commercially zoned. It's kinda,
Oh, is that the attorney there? No.
No.
I'm at a loss. I'm
Real
completely
estate?
blanking out here.
I think it's real estate, Horn.
Does the Eagle Building have a residence?
Oh, it's the real estate.
no, this is
Offices.
to the left we're talking
There,
about now.
but up, and I'm only saying that because it looks like you're, that, what is it, the number 7 townhouse is kind of, it could just be the scale too. Kind of close to that lot line. I'm sure it has the setbacks
It
met
has
and
the
everything.
setbacks, it's over 8 feet,
8 feet is the setback?
and it has that, so it does meet the setback requirement.
Okay.
And that house is way back, and that house is
Yeah.
right up on the street.
Yeah.
That's what
house
I'm,
is up in-
okay, that's what I'm concerned about, and I'm just looking at it from that perspective. You know, neighbor, what's the neighbor gonna see, what's gonna look like, and
These
that,
neighbors over in here
okay.
are going to see an enhanced, beautified wetland meadow kind of area, which this is an enhanced meadow and residential townhouses as opposed to a commercial building.
That is a rendition a rendering of what, from the street.
Right here, of the antique building of the settlers.
Settlers.
If I was a little further down the street, what does it look like then? I mean, is the landscaping to block?
It's heading towards Hayrhill coming from the square, that view.
It's gonna look like that.
Wow, that looks nice.
There'll be, what's not reflected here, there'll be more green in here that you see on this plan.
Right.
That will be in this area here, but this kind of gives you the perspective.
Yeah, and
Townhouses are set back, the height is a little bit lower on the townhouses because they're set back and because they're a little bit lower. And that gives you a nice perspective of the building.
There's a bird's eye right there if you want. So this is.
Yep,
Yep, and that's the existing, and this is the Eagle Building here. And then this is the wetland we're talking about, that big area there.
The connector piece.
This is the existing connector piece, which is kind of behind
Yeah.
in here that we're,
I'm just
taking down.
concerned with the street view. You know, this is,
the street view is pretty nice.
this is part of what we're doing here, what we're
Right.
looking at here.
Yeah.
Street view is important, and I wonder if maybe a little more landscaping, but that's something that can be dealt with
I
later.
think that, as I said, the landscaping, you see the amount of green that we have here. That's gonna be all in your jurisdiction anyway when it comes to site plan approval, but we do have a lot of green in here that's not reflected so much on the rendering.
Is a
Septic,
previous view.
Yes?
septic, I had a thought there, but I seem to have lost it. The septic is,
We'll have septic. It will comply.
you will have, say, it will comply, you've done your tests, so your pet,
Yes,
your
that's
pits.
one that I will pass on to the engineer to respond to, but obviously we'll have to have a septic system. And it is shown, I think, on the,
Yeah, I'm just,
The
I didn't see
locations are
test
shown
pits
there.
or anything, I mean, yeah, so,
All the perk testing
Fits.
has been done completely.
great.
The
okay.
reason that it's taken months on the design is because of how much it had to be played with and tweaked. Because everyone thinks 1.7 acres is such a huge lot, but when you're doing 7 townhouses and a commercial building, you need a lot of land for the septic system. So Thad Berry, our engineer, has done all that. It's already,
Just looking for,
yep,
you know, trip hazards here, or
yeah,
something like
I
that.
appreciate that.
Things. And the only other thing that I would think of from, well, I don't know whose point of view it's from, affordable housing, creating 7 units and,
we will.
7 units, because the existing unit is not non-residential.
Non-residential, so it's just, there will be a total of 7 units, and we'll comply with your,
What is-
Calculation.
What is that? The 1 unit has to be? It
no, it would
rounds
be a
up,
percentage.
rounds up to 1
Rounds
unit?
up, yes, it does, 1.5, it would, you know,
It's,
yeah.
what is that,
It'd have to be 2 at least.
inclusionary housing
Yeah,
bylaw?
yeah, that's it.
So is
Be
it,
2,
it's-
2 times,
is it 2?
yeah.
2 units?
No, I think it's 10%.
No, it's 10%, which would be 0.7.
Which rounds
Units.
up to 1 whole unit.
Is there anybody else?
Well,
Yeah.
Well,
And how, I'm sorry.
no,
just-
keep going.
Any,
But-
any plans on how that'll be satisfied, or are you thinking of making one of the units an affordable unit, or an in?
We're still thinking about that. That comes into figuring out marketability and all of that and cost as we go forward. We'll have more information on that one.
This isn't an OSRD, though. Can you do it in lieu? Or you have to?
No, it will have to comply with the calculations, so for 7 residential units, they will have to, produce either 1 unit of affordable or
Or the
something
money.
in lieu of. A sum equal to,
Oh, I thought the in lieu was only in our OSRD law.
No, it's in your affordable housing.
That's in, oh, okay,
The housing balance one.
okay, as long as it's in the,
Right.
in that law.
And that calculation
Okay, good.
is based
good,
on
Okay, good.
prices.
Then you'll be able to do an in lieu payment or provide a unit.
Mhm.
The town won't go down on its SHI. Great. My questions are answered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You may have already addressed this a little bit, but there's be plenty enough room for emergency vehicles to go in and out, turn around,
Yes.
and whatever.
Yep. Templates we put on the plan, the engineer, I say we, the engineer puts the templates on the plan and can show that, and I think we have, information I think we have a comment from the fire department already on this project.
Was that part of the package? I didn't see it, the fire.
that wasn't included.
I didn't see
Okay,
it.
that's fine. Nancy.
We do have, we have a acknowledgement from the Conservation Commission that we will be dealing with them. And we have a letter from the fire department, Georgetown Fire Department support the proposed renovations to the existing structure and the addition of the proposed townhouse-style residence. The proposed building renovation/addition must meet all existing MGL and fire code requirements pertaining to the property's proposed use. Also, the proposed townhouse residential units must meet all existing MGL CMR fire codes. Finally, ensure the fire department has adequate access to the property in the case of emergency response.
So they will have to be approved
Yep.
by the fire department.
Absolutely.
Yeah, understood. Anything more?
No.
No?
I do have one last question. That's, I was looking, thank you, Google Maps. This is pretty much all paved here on your neighbor's property. And I notice you do have a strip of landscaping. That's gonna be a challenge, I think, to block that off.
Mr. Watson, there's actually a, kind of a strip already existing there. I don't know, John, are you able to move,
Yeah.
go to that street side again and?
Yeah. So this is the separation point between the two
Yeah,
properties here.
there's some kind of green and there's like
Yeah.
curbing and,
It's not very good
yeah,
shape, but
it's
it's
just,
there.
it just
Yeah.
hasn't been
Yeah.
taken care of, but it's sort of existing already.
Right, and now, back here is another area.
Yeah, so there's our property line, see the shack there?
Yeah.
That shack actually has its own electrical power and its own water.
Yeah.
And our property line actually comes before the shack.
Right in
here.
Right, right to the left. See the dumpster?
Yep,
Is this it? Or
Yeah, our property line is a little above the dumpster.
Wow.
And we
like
go,
right in here?
no, above the
Above.
dumpster.
Yeah, right along there.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
yeah, I think you're gonna have to do some thinking about how you're gonna differentiate, how you're gonna block it, and, cause these folks are who are gonna be up here, are gonna really have kind of a parking lot view.
Right, I think we'll be looking at, doing some nice buffering, screening in here
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
strip. We're showing already some trees along that side. I think we're probably gonna end up being carried around that corner as well. That's a good point.
Goodbye, spruce.
Transplanted. No.
Any,
My backyard, yeah.
so, I guess,
Only kidding.
I just
I,
have one thing. Oh, you, I'm
no,
sorry.
I was gonna be the last one, so go ahead.
Oh, the front building there, if in the future you wanna put a store on the bottom and a house, an apartment on the top, you're gonna have to come to us, because that's a mixed use in our zoning,
You are correct.
yeah. But that isn't the plan now.
No, it's going to be all commercial, so it is not mixed use.
Okay, so that has to be positive, you know,
That is
not up in the
Positive.
air.
We've looked at it.
Yeah.
And proposing the 7 residential units, as we were talking about before, we don't have enough area to put an E from your area calculation per residential unit. So there wouldn't be that opportunity
Yeah,
to put a residential unit above there. But if we did, it would be a mixed use, and then we'd be having to get a special permit for that.
right.
Is that building septic shared? Is it all one, from the 7 units plus that building?
I don't know the answer to that, John.
It's separate.
Septic.
That's how it's designed, yeah.
So these, Nancy, these aren't in any order of importance, they're just my scribbles, so I'm gonna go through each one. First of all, I do wanna say, I really applaud the mixed use, the idea of the commercial and the apartments downtown, as an idea, big thumbs up. And obviously the historic, big thumbs up. So those are like overviews. I'm curious, and you don't need to answer these questions, I'm curious what, if any, views, and picking up what Harry was talking about, will exist for the 3 abutting properties, you know, particularly the one in the back, where looking over the pond, I guess, if it's a water body, I'm not sure if it is, the wetland is a pond or not.
There's a little pond
A
back
little bit
there,
of
yeah.
water there.
Yeah.
But whatever is on the other side of that, looking back through, because that landscape's pretty flat in there. And so,
We do have, we
So
do
you
have
don't-
AU.
It has to be a cranberry bog.
really?
Yep.
This one
Really?
is, I think it's a little too close to the building to give you the view that you're talking about. And it gives you an idea. Nice wildflower meadow. On that side. So
So,
this is the perspective from probably right back here.
So that's the back of the
So,
townhouse?
so,
Yes.
I appreciate the view. What's the length, the length of that structure?
The length of
Of
this.
all, roughly.
Let's see, John. Our architect will tell you.
Here it is. 46.
46, 5.
46.
46, 5 times 7?
By
Plus 4,
54.
46.
4, yeah, 160-ish?
160-ish?
Yeah,
Huh?
160-ish, sound right? 178?
178. So it's a little bit wider than the width of a football field. So that's just for a frame of reference. It's a big mass. I'm not going anywhere with that other than it is a big mass. And in the back, in the view, while this picture is really, a nice picture, I'm not convinced on the picture. So it's just the subject of mass and how you want to address breaking down the mass with perhaps significant plant material.
Yeah.
Now, you're gonna have to work with the Conservation Commission, and I don't know, they typically don't have a problem with planting large trees that are native to wetlands. But where you craft your fine lawn, which is what the people who live in the units will be using and thinking is sort of their place to go and walk, versus the tall grasses, and where the Conservation Commission is going to let you craft the fine lawn, that's gonna be, I think, a bit of a challenge. So, whoever you have doing your landscape, I think this is a pretty complicated piece to get right. And I would recommend, paying close attention to that.
Okay.
Let's see, views of the butters in the back. Why two exits coming out of the parking lot versus one exit?
We have a traffic review that is being put together, and we really thought it made sense for the commercial folks to have the stacking ability for if folks are taking a left-hand turn and they have to wait a little longer, people going on the right can scoot out. We have the room for it, so it seemed to make sense.
So my first reaction to that is, I think the only other place I can think of where we have a that wide of a curb cut is at the Georgetown Building Supply, which is a constant problem. And the issue is that people just don't get it. They just don't get it. And when there's a 24-foot wide, one way in, one way out, it's visually obvious to someone who's driving there. I go in on the right and I leave on the left. And when you have these two like this coming out, it starts to get loosey-goosey. People start swinging wide. I think it actually contributes to a traffic issue versus helping it. So I would look at that again and be prepared to, if this is what you want, to be able to defend it. I'm not convinced of that.
Are there good pavement markings at Georgetown Supply?
No, but the problem with pavement markings is in the winter they're gone.
That's true.
And so
But
even
there are also no do not enter signs, they.
well, but their
it's
do not enter signs are posted perpendicular. They're this big and they're perpendicular to your arrival.
Right.
The only way you can read them, there was no study of
You
where
drive
the
up to
sign
them.
is placed, how you read it. So that's another whole issue. But
All right, well, be
that
mindful
be-
of that and see
yes.
what we think.
Yep, that's it. Just curious, is the existing roof that material is that you're showing in the rendering? Are you?
Yeah, the crazy goal of ours
Seems to be.
is,
Wow.
it's a slate roof. And the building that's coming down, that connector piece is also a slate roof.
Wow.
So we're going to try to take some of that slate roof that's coming down to save it so when we restore the front,
Wow.
to be able to match it accordingly.
I hope you can do it. That's great.
It all depends on who we get for a roofer.
Understood. Massing and streetscape. On that, this is just a general comment.
Did it at the
Again,
There's a special roof in there.
first of all, I'm very appreciative of the honesty of this street level perspective. This is how you are going to see it versus a bird's eye view versus, so I tip my hat to you on that, thank you. I am concerned about the mass of that building. It's 3 stories high, and it's a fairly good-sized chunk of building. And I think it's bigger as far as a depth, width, block than any other building I can think of in Georgetown. I could be wrong, but, so I'm just leaving with, I'm concerned with the mass
Of the,
of that one main
the
building.
main building out front, which is what is there.
But it's not all that high, is it?
Yes,
Oh, it is.
yes.
It is.
The building
Why am
up-
I thinking it's a different mass then?
The existing building is 3 full stories.
Yep,
I believe the existing building is higher than what you allow in that zoning.
Yes, it is.
oh, you know,
Our-
okay.
Our town,
Okay, this is really helpful and this is really good. This is fun. I have a hunch why I'm responding this way is because the existing building has that attachment to it, which is
Right,
low.
right.
And what that does is that transitions that building down to the ground.
Right.
So, what that tells me is, when you're looking at your landscape again, there may be some really key locations for perhaps softening the mass of that building with very carefully selected trees where they go. Okay, so
Can I
that's,
glow on that?
that's that issue.
To try to take a little bit of the condos view away, or the view of the condos, I should say, from the street. You do have that wide opening, it's gonna draw the eye, and if you can buffer that and screen that in some way, I don't know if you'd have to change your road or how you'd have to do it, you'd have to get creative, but I think it might benefit.
through the chair, if I may.
Sorry.
Just one thing is, the townhouses are 2.5 stories, they're not 3 stories. So it is actually a big difference. So I think.
Oh, and the building in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
So
yes.
so the
height
townhouse is a
different.
2.5 story.
Yep.
Not 3.
Yep,
And then my question to the board through the chair. The townhouses are designed, and a lot of money to be spent, to match what we're restoring. So why are we trying to hide them? They're absolutely gorgeous. We need proper landscaping. All the suggestions that you made are right on. No disagreement. But why do I want to screen what we're making historical to match the front?
I don't think screen, well, there's two, one is the streetscape view that you see going in off the general public on a day-to-day basis, and I think all that Harry's talking about is not screening, not blocking, but, in a few key places, just breaking up the mass.
Yeah.
But I think it's different though for the people in the back, that even though you're matching the architecture, there's not 170-foot long piece of that architecture that you're trying to match. And for the abutters looking at that, not about screening it out completely, because you can't, but it's a little bit more important where the word screening starts to apply.
But the other thing I just want everyone to look at is the size of the existing building on the lot now. The only difference is it
Can you
goes
go- can you go to the
the other
existing-
way.
Yeah, and I just want to point out here, I don't know if we got our facts straight, measurements straight the last time. These units measure in width 27 feet by 32 feet. Yeah,
30.
189 feet in length. We were
Oh,
way
okay.
off before.
Okay, so 189,
feet,
so
190 feet.
it's almost 3 lengths the football field, 3/4 the length of
Right.
the football field. Okay, so
What
that's,
did,
that-
what did we
that's
think before? Football field?
a width.
John,
Yeah.
do we know it from here?
So that's just an
Just
analogy.
what you were saying there,
Where do we want to
sort
go,
of
Rob?
try to break it
The
up.
existing conditions plan, You had something to say about
The existing building is a very, very large building. It just goes the opposite way.
Goes back.
Yeah, we're taking down over 7,000 square feet of building.
Right,
That no one can
But-
see.
Here we go, we're
No,
almost
you
there.
can,
the
you can
street
see
where it's
that.
Actually,
You don't see it.
That's the
They're
back.
see it.
the same size.
but there is a,
This goes this way and the other one goes that way.
Correct.
That's the issue.
I would,
This is the
I would,
existing.
I would say that
Right.
location of that ground plane where the building is perpendicular to Main Street is a very different experience of mass versus parallel to Main Street.
You know, I'm
So-
not that concerned with
But
mass,
I don't
because
wanna
it's
get
the
hung up.
center of town. It's where you would expect to see buildings.
Yep.
Now, it's set back, which is not the same as it is in other parts of town, but since it is a mass, it has a more town sense to it. I like very much the fact that the fronts of these are not all in a line. They're,
Yeah, you
They're
don't want it
staggered.
uniform.
yeah, exactly, I
I'd like
think,
them better if they weren't garage doors.
Well, I think
That's-
that's,
So-
if I
that's
can
the
respond to
thing.
that point, because we're dropping down so much, the garage
That's-
doors kind of recede.
That's,
It's almost a shame the garage doors couldn't be on the backside of the
The
pond.
back.
To drive through the wetland.
You can't.
You're gonna have to do that.
You can't.
I'll let you present that.
So that's enough of that
Yeah.
discussion.
We
Matt-
understand your point.
And it's an observation.
Yep.
Lighting will be very important. When you come back to us, and I would recommend sooner rather than later, if you would kindly show, even if it's a plan that's a smaller scale, show the abutting structures, just go to the tax maps and approximately
yeah.
locate them, so we actually can talk to.
Yeah, we'll have that.
Fine lawn pond improvements. When you talk with Conservation Commission, I don't know if there's any opportunity to make improvements to the pond itself. Just a question, don't even have to answer it, but that's between you and them. Versus a stagnant pond in the backyard.
clean it
Yeah,
up,
residents.
that's what they're gonna say.
What's the source of that water anyway?
There were a couple of big trees here, I don't, off
It's a
the top,
dump.
existing trees, off the top of my head, I don't know their quality at all.
Right.
But they might be worth locating on the survey, and if they are good trees, you may wanna consider an effort to try to keep them.
Yeah,
We always do.
If you do wanna keep them, if we go in that direction, we can talk about it later, there's certain protocol to take care of to do that. So that was basically, that was my comments. And I go back and I summarize it by saying, this mixed use is just great, and the historic is just great, so.
I did have one other
Okay.
question.
If I may,
Well,
Chair.
okay, yep, so we're gonna this is gonna come back to us to finalize
Yeah.
this, but.
But the complaints I have had with the residents that do live down there is that the noise is tremendous. So if you can buff it up with,
Noise.
vegetation or
Noise.
double window noise.
Traffic noises,
Insulation.
traffic.
Traffic is horrendous.
The mass of that building is
Oh,
going
no,
down a tremendous
take a
amount.
lot of it on.
Pardon, I can't,
The mass of the building, the way
The
it's
front.
spread out there,
yeah,
this is a funnel right now, it comes straight through across that lowland and up to
Right.
their houses. This is gonna be right in the middle,
It'll be a sound wall.
so it'll be like a sound wall.
yeah.
I hear what
See
you're
those,
saying.
those green islands you have between each apartment unit, between the parking spaces, garage entrances?
Yes,
Those are key opportunities for you can pick a significant tree that's gonna grow there, not cover the entire building, but do a columnar type deciduous tree. Go a long way to what Terry's talking
Pull
about.
the eye away from that door.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a number of opportunities there.
Yeah, you really do. You really
Right,
do.
repairs.
Oh, and speaking of, on your septic system below ground, this is getting down the road, but, what we want to avoid is a system that gets built where then you only have like 6 inches on top of that, or 9 inches on top of that with a grass that you try to grow, cause you're never gonna get it to grow. So it's just paying good attention to, when you design that, the final section, whether it's a certain amount over that, or you build some small decorative retaining walls around the sides of it and build up on top of that, and you put a little landscape on top of it. That's where the landscape and having someone take a close look at it would be very important. not only for the board, but for the people who live there.
Oh, yeah.
So, so that's it. for me.
And
I just mentioned Bradford pears trees, but, huge problem with them.
But what, yes,
One in my front yard.
They don't last very long.
Right.
no, so there's,
It's 100
there's
years
a,
old.
there's a series of,
Prolific.
yeah,
That's the
so you
problem.
wanna get someone that knows what they're doing. There's a series of cultivars, in the Bradford pear family, which actually are very good. But I'm not recommending that tree, I'm not recommending, but there's a lot of columbine trees. You just need someone that knows it.
Yep, absolutely.
In Hudson, one of our previous jobs, subdivision, they predominantly put in Bradford pear trees. And, that last big ice storm we had wiped out 80% of them. You know, my brother-in-law next door to me has been trying to plant, Bradford pears in the last 25 years, he's gone through 3 of them. So, they just don't last with ice storms in New England.
Make a
Beautiful
suggestion,
trees.
Try a Bartlett next time.
A Bartlett,
A
okay.
little bit more hardy.
They could take the
I still have
winters.
one
Yep,
question.
last
and-
one.
And that's, how do you differentiate between a bonus room and a bedroom?
A bonus room
What a
and a
health does.
bedroom.
They look the same size, they have,
Typically, bonus rooms don't have closets. Bedrooms have closets.
So like an office?
That's,
Something like that?
everybody wants a computer room.
If I can speak to that too, and the way this site plan worked out, given the desire to have a parking, internal parking, which I think is, in this climate, is huge. It doesn't allow us to have a really big living room downstairs. So the room up at the top has that pretty much floor-through aspect to it, plus a little balcony on the back. So you actually have more attractive living space on the top. And that would make up for the fact that we don't have very far to go down to groundwater.
You can make it your TV room or whatever you want,
Yep.
yeah.
So, I guess with that, John, we would, take this to the next meeting.
Yeah, if that's what, the board wants to do. Are you ready to come back to the planning board in 2
Sure,
weeks?
I
or-
guess the question is, this part of the process, you don't have a formal filing before you.
Correct.
This is an advisory role, I believe, to the Board of Appeals.
Correct?
You will certainly get a full site plan package, which will address everything that you've talked about tonight, and then a lot more, when we get to site plan approval. So for purposes of making a recommendation to the Board of Appeals or input to the Board of Appeals, I don't really know what more you need from us and whether you're even able to do that tonight. I
Well,
mean, you,
So, I mean, are we making, using the example of the Olson project, where we had a really thorough review of the project, and we had a list of, this item, and we created that document, and we provided that to the ZBA.
We did that because they were the permit granting,
Right.
the exclusive permit granting authority. The difference between that project and this project, they have to come to us for site plan approval.
right.
Okay, so so the ZBA, are they looking to us for anything today?
I doubt it.
No, I mean, what you have to understand is, this is input. This isn't our site plan
Right.
approval.
Correct.
So,
Understood.
basically, as I put in the staff report, it's, the Economic Development Committee reviewed it, the Historic Commission reviewed it. It's a matter of commenting on, the use is appropriate, the scale and character, if the board got to that point, or you still need more time to review that part of it. But basically, it's a mixed-use redevelopment of a downtrodden property. It's
I guess
it's
what I'm-
moving in the right direction for the zoning district and the location.
So I agree with all of that. I guess what I'm wondering is, if I'm sitting in the ZBA, if I'm in their chair, and I'm looking, which I guess is my question, are they looking to get from us our feedback at this point in time about what we see?
I'm sure in time for their first public hearing, they would like to have,
Okay, so
at least
that's-
our initial input. If we're gonna spend months on the review of this
Well, that's
for
an- that's
input to the
another-
ZBA,
That's another, so with that, what I'm thinking is that we just need to summarize what we just talked about, and just a memo from you
Right.
in regards to from the board, and maybe maybe there's no need for you to come back then, maybe it's just.
I don't see any need in it.
That's
It
what
sounds
I'm
like we
thinking.
need
I
to-
think
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you had strong objections to the project, the ZBA would want to know that.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly not hearing that, and that's not what you're saying, so I think if you just summarize what you said and remind the ZBA that we will have to come to you for full site plan review, they might,
I
Like
I
to do that.
question, John, why she isn't here with a site approval. Why are we going through another couple of meetings?
Right, well,
And we could have had a site approval. It's no mandatory that you go to them, ZBA first, and then come to us.
Well, they got a lot of opportunities to go down in flames if they saw how many variances they need.
I know, but
They-
I
they
think
could still
we're-
crash and burn.
We're also giving her a lot of time and then come back again.
Oh,
And then if we say it's something that we're not gonna agree with when we get the official application,
But
We gotta-
this is really a planned out sequence because,
I think it's
you know,
well-
he has to,
well thought out.
this project needs to overcome hurdles,
yeah,
which are absolutely important to go forward.
Right.
Relative to
Oh,
site
yeah.
plan. So they gotta go to the ZBA, handle those issues,
Yeah.
right? Then it's important for them to get through Conservation Commission
Yeah.
issues, really before they come to us.
Yeah.
I know the laws allow them to mix and match, but, I did put together a draft motion that, what it does is basically spell out the project. And then what it says is that, the second part of it, the end of it, is the above described ZBA special permit application meets the criteria.
It's a zoning determination, we're not
That's
really.
not- we're not.
Our bailiwick. I think
think
maybe, like Rob was saying, I think maybe a summary of some of the
Yeah.
comments we had.
a concept.
And something we can look at maybe at our next meeting,
Yeah.
So,
in our packet, and we
Mr.
can.
Hoover, could I ask a question?
please.
I'll put it kind of simply. What we're looking for is just, is the planning board, do they like the concept of this idea? With the mixed use, the townhouses, restoring the building. That's what we're simply looking for.
And that's probably really
That's
all
it.
that we can say. But
Exactly.
the caveat to that is, and now I'm only speaking for myself, I'm going to wanna let the ZBA know that I do have a question about the massing of the project.
The density,
And that's all, that's as far as I would go with that.
yeah.
And then if
Two
they want more
sentences.
information, they can ask for more information. But I would be uncomfortable just saying this project as is. You know, so for me, when I think of massing, I'm thinking of landscape and I'm thinking of the importance of that.
and I guess if you're going, and I have no problem with that because that's what, all of what we were discussing tonight, just clarify in the massing that you're not talking about density.
Oh, I
Because
would,
that's different.
definitely, I would talk about it, so that's for
Yeah,
one
it is.
person.
It is, I agree.
There's a lot of density there.
I just wanted to be clear while we're all here, I was not talking about density.
Yeah, yeah.
That was not where I was going. So John, you know, John, can you
Yeah.
draft a memo for our next meeting that just basically talks about, you know, what I thought I've heard is the mixed use approach. The board they like the thumbs up, they support it, they support the historic, they support the concept. Basically, it's letting them know the board supports it.
Well, when
And there are some technical questions that the planning board has, and you could say, for example, two ways out. You use that entry exit as one example of a technical issue that there is a design solution for, but we just won't get into it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, a well thought out landscape
I don't,
plan that deals
Yeah.
with screening and the massing of the project.
I don't
Chairman,
think
can
that
I
we
add-
should be using mixed use. Excuse me. I don't think we should use mixed use development because according to our zoning, this does not fall into mixed use development.
Correct.
So if we could use another word there,
You are absolutely correct, and Nancy
Yeah.
pointed that out to me after I
Yeah.
drafted
I
the
didn't
staff
pick up the,
report.
We didn't pick up the 34 West Main though,
We were
huh?
always
Yeah.
labeling this as we were viewing it as a mixed-use
Yeah.
development.
But it's not
But it's not,
technically.
because it's not the building. We will be dealing with the mixed-use development very shortly, though.
Okay.
And
in
it
the
might
form
be-
of the CBS building.
And
About time.
I would be totally, would you like to see a copy of this paragraph that we put together also?
I
mean,
would.
you have every right to see it.
I would
It
love to
makes
see that.
sense.
I'll send it to you, you
Yeah.
can edit it and
Yeah.
give it to
Throw
you
your
guys.
2
We'll-
cents.
Sure.
We'll have it well-crafted.
Thank you. We
The
would
only thing I
appreciate
can
that.
add to any of this is, I really wish those garage doors could go on the backside. And I know you'll never,
I don't like 'em
but you know
either.
what? I was on the
Ratchet that
Concom
man
for
in rain.
quite a few
I
years.
agree with you, but
And
we haven't figured out how to do that.
Well, I'm looking at it and move everything a little bit that way and put your pavement on this side of it and
Believe
make it permeable.
Believe it or
permeable
not, you
pavement.
wouldn't,
If it's
the
permeable
most difficult
pavement.
thing is the septic systems.
I'm wondering how you're gonna deal with stormwater management, but that's.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near septic. It's
You'll
nowhere near
get
it.
your shot at stormwater
I'm
management.
not,
You will.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
all,
didn't even go there.
so thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, we
and your
appreciate
input.
your time. I think this is a really
It's a
good
fun
process for the
project.
town.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Maybe
so-
you could put windows on the garage doors. So they're not so,
They have really fancy garage doors.
Yeah, they
we're-
do.
next
Make
we're
them
gonna
historic
start talking
garage
about the-
doors.
I would prefer to
They
look
look
at
like a barn.
fancy garage
Historic
doors rather
garage.
than trying to move them around to the
I think garage
backside.
doors
My
look like a barn
brother-in-law
door.
just put one in.
He says to
My
them,
wife wants me to do the same thing.
bring that road around.
It's not gonna happen.
you could strangle it, right?
Deal with fancy
Fancy garage doors, we'll look at those.
Mine's on the back though of the house. His-
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I took your advice.
Thank you,
Harry.
good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank
I took your advice,
Okay.
Harry, 25 years ago, put my garage door on the back.
So, let's see, we,
Cool.
I don't have a garage door, I
gonna
just
go
have a barn
to-
door, we can't park our cars.
we only have,
It
three
opens,
more
but
items.
it's not level.
So it sticks.
No, like if you go in, I'd worry that the ground wouldn't hold the car. 'Cause it's not the bottom ground. Oh. No, there's another level underneath the barn. You
Oh,
like
it drops way down?
Yeah. Like you go around back.
Okay.
there's a hole.
If I can get everyone's attention, we will go to the planning office. We have 3 items left on the agenda. We have the online ethics training class, and I'm gonna hand those in to John. And if you still need to do that, please do. Tilly, I don't know if you got that email, they have a link on it and that's.
I'll do it for the next meeting.
It's,
Remember, click till you're happy. Wait, you get it right.
I stapled my signature page with that.
I must have about 15 or 20 of them on there.
bet
The
you do.
town's already got.
Yeah, you have to do it every 2 years,
Oh,
Tilly.
now it's every year.
Oh,
Oh, I thought it was every 2.
I think it's every year now.
I
I
sent
think it's
mine,
every 2.
Oh, is it?
Which we did it last year.
Yeah.
But you might
Seems
as well
like
get it
it.
away, get it over
I've
with.
had to
I-
do so
I
much
sent mine in.
CE in my life the
Did
past
you do
month.
that one too?
yeah, I sent them in.
Oh,
I
good.
sent them in to,
So who's,
Correct.
did I CC you?
Yeah,
Okay.
you did.
so whoever hasn't will do that.
That was an extra.
Okay, so the second item
I'm gonna
You already-
keep these in
you-
there.
is,
Pages.
the second item is
Yeah, but that's
discussion
not-
on the
that was
4G
extra
technology,
third
which is
copy.
continued from the last meeting. And, John, do you wanna
Well,
give an overview of what you handed out in the packet?
Yeah.
And then I have some
not our
information I
bylaw at
want.
all, is it?
no, that's just,
Our tower bylaw?
We have,
no, but what's happened, that
so why don't you give a
example.
presentation to
Okay,
the thing
yeah.
there and we'll.
Okay, so, if you had a chance to, catch up on some reading, that's associated with the staff report, you probably know a lot more about this technology and what's going on, and, you know, it, contrary to what we thought at the last planning board meeting, the pole that's being proposed at the intersection of Main Street and Central, that would be a pole-mounted, telephone pole-mounted, that's what they're proposing, with the antennae system for 4G, but it can also be upgraded when the technology becomes available to 5G.
Gotcha.
And the reason why they want that location, and this is Tilson, which is a privately held company that installs these particular wireless communications units in areas of towns that are weak on band capacity for cell phones. So that's where you have you know, the major amount of traffic associated with Georgetown, and there is a weakness there with telecommunications.
Yes, big time.
Cell phone oriented. So they want that particular location. What they've proposed is at odds with, you know, the aesthetic qualities of that particular area. What the town has actually told the company is that, why don't you look at mounting, you know, within a building, on top of a building, but, you know, not coming up with this monstrosity of a structure that really isn't needed. You know, these wireless systems, these antennae systems can be put anywhere and disguised really well. You know, just for example, in the Southwest, they make cactuses, you know, fake, and they look,
Yeah,
look
I've
pretty.
seen that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you can, you know, make that stanchion,
Trees.
and if you did have a chance to read through some of the materials, they have E-poles now that do have more aesthetic qualities to them than just mounting them on telephone poles. And this wasn't an existing pole that they were planning, this was just a pole they
Their
were
own
put out,
pole.
so.
Right.
Not very respectful of the town and not very respectful of the aesthetic qualities of the downtown area and what we're trying to do on a continuous basis to enhance the beauty of the downtown. You know,
Do we
just-
get tax money out of it?
That's another issue that's being handled right now at the federal level, and there are discussions going on, and municipalities may be limited by FCC rulings of $500 per year per.
That's nice,
Yeah, yeah. And
So
the reality is, a lot of these existing cell phone, whether they're in steeples, church steeples, they're inside buildings, on top of buildings, whatever, the property owners of those facilities are making, you know, anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000.
Right.
You know, I know one person making $25,000.
Wow.
You know, a month, not a year.
Yeah.
A month.
A month?
So these are valuable assets for the telecommunications industry. Now, if you really had a chance to read through this is all part of that 5G build-out that is scheduled to really take place in rapid order throughout the country. And 5G is 10 times faster than 4G technology. So this is the technology that is really going to catapult the entire country, and it's already being implemented throughout the world. But one of the readings I was doing in preparation for this evening, Estonia, you know, a former satellite country, Russia, they're the most up-to-date 5G country in the world right
That's
now.
amazing.
Yeah, and everything's 5G, it's being implemented in fast order, and the per capita income of Estonia is potentially greater than, you know, all the surrounding countries. Even though it's a little country, it's
Wow.
already 5G oriented. And that's going to take place in this country in real fast order, and it's gonna create, you know, millions of jobs, trillions of added income. Like 4G technology has a value associated with it already. I think it was maybe $15 trillion added to the strength of our economy in the US. This is going to be more than 10 times that. This is what they describe it as. This is the fourth keystone technological revolution. The first one being the steam engine. The second one being, I'm gonna be in one of these traps here, but the second one being telecommunications in general, and then the third generation. This is the fourth keystone of our industrial evolution, and this is going to be huge for this country's economy and for the world economy. This has been the missing link. 4G is slow motion compared to the speed of travel. That data is going to be interconnected. So everything we have now is going to be multiplied speed-wise by tenfold. You know how you download something now?
Yeah.
It's all gonna be instantaneous.
So you compared to what we have today on the books?
Throw away your phone.
You compared,
No, excuse me. That ordinance
Yeah.
is what communities are doing, getting ready for the small cell technology. That's what they call 5G, small cell technology. They're integrating existing telecommunications ordinances. They're integrating the 5G, the small cell technology, into their existing telecommunications ordinances.
I haven't read it, updated, but I thought it would apply to anything electronic or
Yeah,
cell
well,
phones.
yeah.
So I think we already have something existing.
An analogy is that we had a medical marijuana zoning ordinance that had to now accommodate the retail law that was passed. And it's the same thing here. We have a telecommunications ordinance. Most communities adopted those in the middle '90s, early '90s,
Right.
for the cell phone towers,
Right.
being the first generation infrastructure build out for the cell phone industry, broadband. Now you have this new element, much smaller, but most communities don't have regulations for it. So what is happening is those initial telecommunication zoning ordinances developed in municipalities and adopted by them in the '90s are being updated to accommodate this 5G technology. And it's just starting. This is absolutely just starting, but when it starts, it's going to start taking off because the infrastructure technology is already being built and it's being ordered, and it's starting to take off. And it is going to
So what
happen.
I'd like to,
And all I wanted to say is that, like cable TV years ago, it first started in the most densely populated areas and spread out from there. And that's what's going to happen in this regard. 5G is going to be implemented in, your urban core areas and then built out from there.
so Tilly, I don't know how much you're up to speed on this or not, but my understanding of where this is that this group, Tilson Company, came in and put on the table to the town that they want to put in one of their wireless 4G poles downtown. And they provided a sketch of what it might look like, and they have been dealing with the selectmen because it is the selectmen's jurisdiction. It is in the right of way, which is the selectmen's, it's not ours, jurisdiction. So the selectmen it's not really a permitting authority, but they're the ones that will say, okay, sign off on it. The selectmen have asked us to use our expertise to help them with guiding how this happens to the best of our ability. So with that being said, they authorized the planning board to talk with town council John Eichman. And literally this morning, I had a conversation with John Eichman. And what we came up with on the phone, which I have communicated to Mike Farrell, Joe Bonavita, Dave Schofield, and John, is we basically, the FCC and the FCC, basically, you cannot regulate these things for aesthetic reasons. They really can pretty much do whatever they want. So what you have, the term that John gave me on the phone was ascertainable and clearly defined standards. So if this company has submitted a formal application, which as of right now, I'm not clear whether they have submitted a formal application or not. But if they have submitted a formal application, my understanding is the selectmen have 90 days where they are required by law to rule on the project. So if they have filed that as a formal application, and if it was back in October, the ship has sailed for what we may or may not be able to do on this particular application that has come before the board. If they have not, we're just getting this, the planning board's just getting on board now. If they have not, what I came up with John on the phone was I'm calling it a bridge policy regulation. And it's to give to the selectmen a bridge policy regulation that will deal with what is ascertainable and clearly definable: texture, size, color, height, material, and where it can go. And to draft a policy statement that simply says, we, the selectmen, are looking at these issues right now, texture, size, and we are going to be coming up with a full set of regulations later that you, the applicant, now are aware of. We're going through this process and you'll have to meet that. Because the regulations for this are really, really complicated. They're really complex.
I
There's-
know,
there-
because I was involved with the first one, and we made it so general that I feel like,
So those are towers. Those are towers.
no,
This is
but the
different.
title of our bylaw
Yeah,
is wireless communication facility, special permit.
Facility, yeah, yeah.
The zoning board is the appeals, is the special granting authority. They can authorize the construction and operation of a wireless communication facility in the industrial B district. So that's how general
But-
we wrote it for
But-
the
but-
tower.
But that's for zoning, and this
Well,
is, no, but this is in the right of way of the town, which is the selectmen's.
Everything is
purview.
zoning though, everything is zoning.
Yeah,
Whether
why
you-
can't we zone this out of
I know.
existence?
Hmm?
I'm not zone it out of existence, that would be wrong, but put them only in the IB.
They-
Make a
You
zoning
can't-
bylaw that says
you
no,
can't-
only
if-
goes
if
in the
you-
IB.
you can't do that. These guys have so much power that if they can show that there's a breakdown in communication, and they can't do it in another place and have that same fix to the breakdown in communication, if you can't prove that, they can put it where they want to.
Well, it sounds like they can
That's
put it
the
anywhere they
FCC.
want to, so
Correct.
the trick here is to make it as
To do the best we can
difficult
with it.
as possible for them to just come in and
I
say
would,
where they
I would
wanna
word
go
it,
to.
I would word it a little bit
Well,
different. I
make
would
it
say,
difficult, make it expensive, make it
I
a
would-
long, arduous process.
I would say
that's-
I would say to do our best to work with them to find where the best place is to put it.
Because you wanna work with them,
And-
because we do have an issue.
You have a need,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to meet it whether you want to or not. And so to come up with, the ascertainable and clearly definable, measuring stick, that part is about later on. The details to that is something that right now, my understanding is Dave Schofield is taking the first pass at that. And he, because of the lighting department and the poles and his utility, their experience, so my understanding is taking the first pass at that, which is great. And right now, as of today, the communications with the select board and Mike Farrell and us is simply that you need to, verify if the applicant filed a formal application, because if that's happened, you have 90 days from that date to make a decision, and you guys need to figure that one out, because we don't know the answer to that.
What kind of an
Hopefully.
application? Hold on a minute.
A formal application to the selectmen,
To the selectmen.
correct?
All right, so you're stating that the selectmen are in charge of the town's property, just like any other property owner. They would have to
Right of
come
way.
to the zoning, planning board or zoning board, whoever is the special permitting authority. If in fact this is not valid for that, and this is not legitimate in today's world, our bylaw, as it reads, then Eichmann ought to be telling us this. And we either eliminate it or correct it.
Well,
And I
that's,
just-
what we do with that ordinance right now is a good question, but it's almost a separate question from what's in front of us today with this application, or not, it's not an application, but they're going to be filing an application, and what we're trying to do is buy ourselves time to develop what we do need for that ordinance.
Develop a plan. They're
Correct.
two separate issues that both need to be worked on, but that seems to
Correct.
be the priority. That also needs to be worked on, but this is more urgent.
Well, I think, you listen to what I read. This bylaw is, to me, it's collecting all of the communication. It's 16580. 80.1 if you have your book. Look it up and read it, because to me, anything that is related to cell tower, cell communication, whatever, it's this bylaw.
You know, I
So-
mean, I'm taking a whole different take to this, and I know aesthetics is most important. But,
Well-
you know, these are small,
You can't rule on aesthetics. You cannot
right,
rule
but
these
I'm
things
just
on
saying,
aesthetics.
these are small units, of which, if you're technologically oriented and you like technology progressing, you, unless you do enough reading about the subject matter,
Oh.
you can't really understand how much this is going to change the world. I mean, all communications between anything computerized is gonna be instantaneous. And that's what's happening in the world. And if you don't keep up with technology, you become a lost victim. You know, and as a community, you're going to want to have what all the other communities have. You don't wanna be a community that isn't up to speed with the speed of technology. You can't imagine how different the world is going to be in another few years.
You have
just
to accept
because
it,
of
you have to
this.
work with it.
And if you don't, so be it.
You're screwed.
You'll be the Shakers
Yeah.
of the world. You'll be the you know, the Mennonites. If you wanna live in that type of environment, fine. But, you know, this is a worldwide event that's taking place, and the whole world is going into that.
Well, I'd like to have Ike look at this and
Where-
get an answer
Can
from
I
him
just get a
Well-
clarification?
about
Yeah.
this. Can I get this?
Where is
You're
that in
communicating?
the bylaws?
It's 16580 in the zoning law.
My understanding, Tilly, is that right now but we can, my understanding is that, and I'm just looking at my note for what John said, that the selectmen pass and rule on the policy and regulations for the right-of-way, for the road, for that part of the main corridors like that. That's the selectmen's jurisdiction for policy and regulations. It's why the light department, excuse me, has to go through the selectmen, not us. And we had nothing to do with that, although we did get involved because the selectmen allowed and embraced that
Well,
part of the
my
process.
thought is
So-
that
so
it's
that's
just
a
like any
different
other
issue.
property owner.
But it's not, and that's
But
the
it's
thing, this
not.
is the
Okay.
this is the FCC. And
So was this.
it's the feds.
So was this.
But,
Well, and five.
But those are those towers that people put in.
No, it's not necessarily a
But that's what
tower.
it was written for, those
yeah.
were those,
Tilly,
this was
Tilly,
written
this
for
is,
those
this,
big towers.
this section, is 1997.
Right, that's when we did it.
Those are those big towers that
That's
people.
when we had
But read
televisions
it,
that had
read it to me
CRTs.
and
I
tell
did
me
read it.
it doesn't apply to anything.
No, it does
It's-
apply,
and
but it's,
everything.
but it's what's applied to the past.
It's buggy whips.
It's when people.
It's
would-
outdated
it's when-
technology.
It's when it regulated people from making deals to put one of those big towers in their backyard. Cause then you had to meet the zoning and you had to put it in a certain way and whatever, and it addressed those issues. It doesn't address this technology
Anything on the sidewalk,
today
is that what you're telling me?
in the public right of way.
Yeah.
On those main streets, the selectmen, correct, it doesn't, it's outdated information. And that's why we have to write these new, they're so complicated, I mean, how to start to regulate the technology of this 2x3 5G box. I don't have a clue.
Forgive me, and
You have to
I get the
study it and know the
5G, and I
details.
understand that we need to deal with it, but my understanding was that this application, or will be an application at some point, was 4G.
It is.
It is.
Correct.
It is, but it can be upgraded.
Correct.
Within its own component, it can be upgraded, and it's being planned that way, to be upgraded for 5G technology.
So when the time comes, it'll be a quick switch to
What you
5G.
gotta- One thing to understand is, all they wanna do is to get down there with this small antenna system, so they can better communicate AT&T cell phone traffic. That's what it's all about. There's a void down there for AT&T. That's what it's being built for just cell phone service now. It's going to migrate into 5G technology. That's what this is all about. But it's all gonna be built out over years. Again, urban core, like Boston, will be built out with this, earlier than, suburbs. And then once the suburbs, then it'll get to the rural communities.
What happens?
Don't get me wrong, I'm all for moving forward with the technology and making sure that everybody in the town has the latest and the greatest. I'm not wild about the idea of additional poles. Is there any way, I mean, I know we're talking to Dave Schofield, we're talking to the selectmen. Why can't, and I understand that this is very compact, new technology. Why do we need to add poles? I mean, we've got enough poles down the square. There are poles down there.
I would
Why
say,
can't we add, just
Well,
glom it on?
ideally, you wanna put this thing, if it's going to go down, to work with the developer to put it on an existing structure, in a building, or on top of a building, out of sight,
Absolutely.
out of mind.
Absolutely, in the steeple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they're fixated on trying to put it within the existing right-of-way.
Well, part of
Mostly-
the, reason, my understanding, is because when you put it inside of a building, it loses some of its coverage.
Yeah, or on top of a building, but see, they're manipulating the situation.
Yeah,
They-
so,
they-
but
no, they-
this is the issues that's in
Yeah.
front of us.
Yeah,
that we
they're,
need to
they're
resolve.
trying to get it within the right of way, and they think they can, say, muscle their way into the right of way, more so than working out an agreement with the private property owner, of which they would have to pay a monthly fee.
Much cheaper to work this way.
But I don't.
Unless we say
but-
no,
but-
in
Yeah,
which case,
that
then
is-
it gets
Right.
very expensive, and then the private property owner starts to look, wow, maybe
Well,
it's a good
again,
idea.
and this is where I don't know, but my understanding is the way the FCC and the power that they have, like the utility companies in this country, they have an incredible amount of authority, independence granted to them by the federal government, and they can pretty much do what they want. If they wanna put it in the right of way, they can put it in the right of way, and we can't stop them. We can only try to work with them to the best of our
I
ability.
think that's really the key, is we've gotta work with them and try to figure out a solution. The other thing that I would be concerned about, though, is AT&T is one, service provider. You got Verizon, you got
That's
Aunt
my
Nellie's.
concern too.
Are we talking about a whole farm down?
That's
Well,
my,
that's why when you read into it,
that's
They can
why-
add antennas.
That's why that's why this is all happening really fast, and
Yeah.
towns aren't equipped to deal with it. That's why we're trying to, this application, or informal, I don't know what you call it, an application, pre-app.
Request, whatever.
I don't know if it's an application or a pre-application, whatever, notification. This project, is the first one. Bring it to our attention, and what we're trying to do is buy some time, with the selectmen. They would have to, post it on their agenda, post it as a public meeting. They would have to, have.
Hearing?
They would have a hearing,
Hearing.
not a public hearing.
Not a hearing.
According to John, it would not have to be a public hearing, it just would need to
Really?
be in their agenda, and it would need to be, fully discussed and
Really?
vetted at the meeting, but not a public hearing. That was according to John Eichman. Then the selectmen would vote that night to say, yep, we're gonna vote on this policy.
Wow.
That we are agreeing that we're gonna come up with hard regulations that are ascertainable and definable later, and we're notifying anybody who comes before us with an application that they gotta be aware that this is coming down the road, and you'll have to meet those requirements coming down.
I think
The
if I
timing
was
of
sitting
this
on the
is gonna be
selectmen's
very-
board,
I know.
I would zap a fee right away. If they're gonna shove it right down our throat, you're gonna pay.
Step one is to just say
That's
no.
my
Can I,
thought.
can I
Step
just,
one is to
can I
say
give
no.
you, can I give you a quick history, right? When the cell phone towers first came into being, right? Communities were completely up in arms. They didn't want the towers, they fought tooth and nail.
They're ugly.
FCC came into play and said, hey, you can only put these things where you can prove there is a void.
They break in
Okay,
communications.
and that resulted, that policy change from the initial
Yeah.
policy changed because these things were being planned everywhere and anywhere, okay? So to put some semblance of order and calm things down, but to also work towards what people recognized, industry leaders recognized the need for this and the industry it was going to create. 30 years ago, if you had a cell phone, you were way ahead, and they didn't work. Everybody has one now from 8 to 80, and they work pretty well. And only because the towers exist where they need to, and there's still voids out there. There are voids in this town, as with a lot of places. You can run up and down the highways anywhere in the country, and you're going to have beautiful cell phone service, because that's where the towers are. This is the next generation. It's small, it's compact. It doesn't have as much mileage involved with the radius as the towers do.
No.
This is line of sight stuff. New England being so treed.
Five will have
it has-
even less.
It's going to have limitations, and, you can read about this, so you'll have a telephone pole, 1,000 feet here from the next one. FCC, the country, the administration, and everybody that's involved with telecommunications and trying to make it a better, faster, more efficient tool of technology for communications, they are letting this thing happen. They're gonna do everything they can to allow this build-out to happen and try to get away from local jurisdiction, because local jurisdiction doesn't understand the technology and they wanna fight it. They don't want anything to do with it,
Put all the
but the
restrictions on
technology
it.
is gonna change your life and everybody else's life and make this country a lot more stronger economically,
I mean,
and create
that-
millions of jobs
and I
and
don't think
trillions of
anyone's
dollars into
arg-
the economy.
And I don't think anyone's arguing with that.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what's
No, no, no,
happening.
but
That's
the
why the
challenge-
FCC is taking this policy, because typically, it's the NIMBY takes hold.
Correct.
We don't want anything to do with this. This is bad. Whatever it is bad.
Change is bad.
Yeah, change is bad,
Well,
bad, bad.
poles are ugly.
Well, you know,
Poles are
but
ugly.
the whole idea is to, work with the industry,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because it'll work against you if you don't work with it, and you work with the
You are
industry,
correct.
and you
will work
hide and
against you.
camouflage and disguise this technology to the extent possible, which is very possible, and you integrate it into community. You don't create an ugliness by this technology being introduced. You absorb it, and you do what you
Yeah, but
can
there's
to
a-
make sure.
It's, I'm very thankful that Dave Schofield, stepped forward in the light department with the time that he's got available to him to be carrying up the research on pulling together this kind of an ordinance in detail, cause it's extremely complicated, it's just gonna take a ton of time. But
don't
in the
think it's-
meantime, for the application or pre-application, whatever it is, we need to address that one. That's what's in front of us and the selectmen in the town right now. And we need to address that one if we can. And if that ship has sailed and there's nothing we can do about it, then we continue to the second page, which is what the light department's working on, which will then come back and we'll work on it all together to come up with something that will hopefully,
Can you find out from the selectmen, like, was it an official?
it's, communications is a challenge.
You got a
And-
copy of my latest email, right?
I did not, I probably didn't read it.
I sent you a copy of what they submitted in letter form and supplemental attachments to the Board of Selectmen. In the first paragraph, it says it's a formal application.
Oh, so it's formal.
Okay, so
Really?
the clock
Why
starts
didn't we
ticking.
all get
But
that?
then,
It's
you
almost
did, you
run out.
you did.
What's the date?
Everybody got
What's
this
the
when we
date?
initially,
What's the date on that?
October 22nd,
Uh.
which would give to January 22nd being the 90
So
days
that's-
prior to.
so it's-
But the Board of Selectmen also asked for supplemental information that the applicant has not submitted.
So then maybe that will
So
extend the
It's
time.
never been accepted as an application. They submitted one, but it hasn't been accepted
So I
by
don't
the
know the
town as
legalities
complete.
of that. And
Well-
my,
If it hasn't been accepted as a complete application,
yeah.
Then
and
then
it's
this
already
is-
been flagged as not being a complete application by the
Yeah.
initial review of the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen.
So there maybe some time.
So maybe
They
it
haven't
hasn't, the
fulfilled
clock
the
hasn't started
completeness
ticking
of
yet.
that
So,
application.
I mean, literally, it's, trying to get this thing in front of the selectmen, like yesterday, so that they can, at their next available meeting, after it's posted properly, have this meeting to get this thing approved, this
Now-
bridge policy approved.
And
But we
it's a-
haven't even talked about it. This all happened today.
And keep in mind, if it is an application that is ready, or it does come at some time, or is in process right now, the selectmen say no, then the onus falls to the company there to take the town to court.
Right.
And I have a funny feeling they'll move to another town, rather than
Well,
take
that's-
that expense.
Yeah.
That's essentially what happens, and that way, and even if they don't, even if they do appeal that decision, then that will buy us the time to do what we need to do to establish
that-
it.
that's-
And while that court case is still there and that appeal is pending, they will be very, very happy to work with us.
So that's the kind of,
According to our new
that
rules.
kind of feedback is something that, the selectmen should hear from people if they feel that way.
I'm sure they're watching right now.
Are you
Well,
sure
but
they
if-
didn't
you know
dump
what
it
I
on
mean,
us?
but-
Potato chips and
Officially.
popcorn and,
Hey,
wow.
On that note, I did invite Tilson, that's the company, their representatives, to come to our next planning board meeting, if this board so chooses to have them here.
Could we put that off?
Sure.
Yeah, let's find out where we are
I'd
strategy-wise.
like to know a little bit more about where we are strategy-wise before they come.
Yeah,
Could you
that's-
just say that our agenda's full of?
Yeah, that's the move right before they apply, before they're ready to put the
These
application in.
copies that you gave us of bylaws, is that from Eichmann?
One of these.
No, that.
I'd like to see where
No,
he's
no,
at.
please, you gotta understand this. That wasn't a mistake in like clipping and cutting. That's just an example ordinance of what communities are doing to implement ordinances into their existing telecommunications ordinances,
Right.
so that their telecommunications ordinance can accommodate the needs of the community for small cell.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to the last item, which is 111 Thurlow Street. We need to sign that plan.
Yeah.
Before I forget,
Both of them, there's the A&R and the modified.
And the Thurlow.
subdivision.
So how are you leaving this, what are we gonna do about this?
Oh, well, okay,
What's the final,
so what,
so we get direction here?
so, this all just happened today.
All right.
We were asked to get involved, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago or something. I mean, so this is all happening really fast, maybe a little longer than that. The request went out to the selectmen, Mike Farrell, to one, verify if it was a formal application and if this 90-day clock has started. They need to answer that question ASAP.
First, okay.
Second was putting forward, to the best of my ability in text, in an email, which is not the way to communicate, but to the best of my ability, an explanation of what this bridge policy idea is about, and what do you think? So right now, the ball is in their court to let us know what they think, or to contact us to say, we need to all get together, or we like this idea, let's pursue it, and then, if we are gonna pursue it, I guess it's, what, is this where it's just hard? I can write some of it, but John Eichmann's gotta put the legalese to it to make it'll a policy that the selectmen can vote on. I'm not gonna do that.
Of course not.
And, so it's like, so the second step, if the selectmen and if they say, yep, let's go this policy,
Right,
bridge policy direction.
right.
What's gonna happen then is I'm gonna write and just identify those categories I talked about before, texture, lighting, texture, color, materials, and I'm not gonna
Size.
define them. I'm not gonna define them, I'm just gonna list these categories, and then John's gonna take them and put them into a 2 or 3 paragraph policy that this is what they're gonna study later, and we'll get the answers later, and it's buying us time, but he'll
This is the functional equivalent of, right now, doing a moratorium.
Kind of.
Right now.
But the difference is, it is going on record with the applicant before they apply, so that you're not surprising them. The applicant now knows, okay, now I'm coming in with an application, they've got this thing already in the pipeline, and I have to be responsible for it. That's the legal way of doing that, to get that to them.
But they may already have an application in, we don't know that.
If it, on that particular one, it could already be in,
Yeah.
but we still need to, because as Bob was saying, this is only for one
They're gonna keep on
company.
coming,
They're
yeah.
gonna keep on coming, so we need to get it in.
Can I ask, is,
And if the selectmen, if there's, I'm not gonna chase down people in terms of getting feedback, I sent this stuff out this morning, and hopefully they'll all respond, and it'll move forward. But there's a good chance it's gonna go over here, and then it's gonna go over there, and then it's gonna go back, and then it's gonna go up, and it's just hard to move things forward quickly.
One of the concerns I had too is that this is 5G, this is gonna be the millennium.
No,
Everything-
this is 4G.
This one's
No, what I'm
These
saying,
guys are
I
4G.
understand, I understand, but, this is in preparation
For
for
5G.
5G.
Yes,
the
yes.
decision page, the signature page, there was a mistake.
What's gonna happen is that in 3 years, it'll be 6G. And then
Oh,
7 years.
I know,
And what
I
I'm,
know.
my
It's never
concern-
ending, I know.
It is never ending, that's really the point.
I agree.
We really can't get too down in the weeds, we have to
Agreed.
keep thinking at an abstract level.
Agreed.
And I
I
think
agree
that's
with you,
basically
Bob.
how
I
general
agree
we
with
wrote
you.
this.
Well, we may
So
use this
that's-
Well,
as a
we
model, but
couldn't,
this
when
is-
that was written, nobody could foresee what the future was.
Right,
No, but
exactly.
I mean-
Yes, we
Any more than
did,
we
because
can.
we had the top attorney Powupsi or Papitsi that he mentioned, he was the key person in the state, and he wrote the bylaws, and that's what he advised us to do it general, because this was going to be so ongoing, and that's why we wrote it like if you
That's
get a
right, that took
chance,
us all
make
the way
sure
up to
you
the
read
church
it.
steeple in the square. The last time that was used, right? The church steeple?
No, this was well, I don't know even
That
if
was the
they
last
church
time it was
people
used.
got it or not.
At
but-
the
They
congregational.
just
got their,
seems
they got
that
their permit. I don't know if
The
it was
guy
ever
that
built there.
wrote this and advised us, several workshops we went to for this. Didn't happen overnight. And that's why you'll read it and you'll see a lot of generalizations in there. And I'm surprised Eichmann didn't mention this at all to you. Sounds like he didn't, anyway.
We did not talk about the ordinance specifically, no, I mean, I'm,
If you get a
I
chance,
think-
and that's what I would hit up on him. That would be my first question.
yeah, and,
What is this?
and so,
Does it cover the sea?
So that, I'm gonna lump into the second phase of this effort. The first phase of this effort is getting this bridge policy in place. And finding out, because without that, Tilly, it's gonna take months to get this thing worked out. It's very complicated, so we need time, and applications are gonna be coming well before this thing is done, and if we don't have something protecting us. So the bridge policy is the most important part of this.
And
But the
you're
selectmen
referring
may
to
not
the
even,
bridge policy
they may
as-
not even, the selectmen may not even like the idea. I don't know
The
where it's
selectmen
going.
might be saying, listen, what's wrong with it? So they add another pole, don't worry about it. Where do I sign?
Yeah, I don't, exactly. I
it's
mean,
very
I
possible,
don't know. I mean, they're, I
What I
don't
don't
We would have no
understand is-
control over it, because they're the ones who
They may
approve
believe
it.
that.
Basically, that's.
What I don't
it
understand is
sounds
why
like.
these units can't go on existing poles so that we're not adding another pole. That's what I
Because
don't
the
get.
poles, the utility poles, my understanding is that they're owned by the Georgetown Electric Light Company, and they said no.
Yeah.
They're privately owned.
Because then who's
They're owned by
who's responsible
Georgetown
for the
Light.
maintenance
town
of the
does not own-
poles,
the town
and
does
what happens
not
if the
own-
poles knocked down?
The town does not own those poles.
And if we had underground
The
wiring,
whole
then what
lighting,
would
the whole
happen?
lighting, the whole lighting thing, the only jurisdiction the town had, the selectmen had with lighting were the fixtures, and the light that they were casting on the right of way on the road.
Right.
They had nothing, they had no power or authority over those poles.
We elect light commissioners.
I know, I know, I know,
In 3 years,
I know.
this could change.
Well, yeah, yeah. But that's my understanding. I'm pretty sure I'm correct when
1 year at a
John said to
time.
me that they
Matter of
said
fact-
no, they said no to the poles.
After 2 years, the last one
Yeah,
will
well, good
agree.
luck at
Yeah.
trying to get
Yeah, I'm
somebody
just trying to,
run for it,
correct,
you know? You wanna run for one of
and
those
then how to
positions?
do
I'll
it if
support
the
you.
printer isn't working very well.
Of course, it never works when you need it.
Right, yeah. Everybody signed that already?
No, so we,
Okay.
it's the A and R plan that we're
The
signing?
A&R and the modification.
Okay, on the modification, I just, well, before we go up there and sign it, I want everyone to understand. John, what does it mean though, on the modification, that we're 2 days past the, appeal period? Does that matter?
No, because that means that, the appeal period is 20 days from the date of filing with the town clerk, and we're 22 days, so it's ready for
Oh,
endorsement.
I misread it then, okay. All right, so basically, those are the plans we need to sign, folks. Oh, you guys already did?
Yep.
I had just a couple of thoughts about this.
All
I
right.
just wanted to give it to you.
Definitely, let me talk to you about that, I gotta sign.
It's getting a little late. Are we still have more business?
I lost track of John, where he went for why, so I'm signing.
He's trying to get a piece of paper. There is also a decision that needs to be signed. In yeah, and the signature page had a misprint, so he's reworking that right now. But that's ministerial. That doesn't have to be done in meeting. Can I make a motion to?
Second.
Well, who's gonna sign it though outside a meeting?
Any of us can sign
Only one
outside a
person
meeting.
signs it?
No, all of us can sign it outside of a meeting. It just,
Well, is everybody gonna,
I just, what are you saying?
I guess
I'll hang
what I'm
around,
saying-
I'll hang around. I just wanna close the meeting and finalize the meeting. call, whatever, we can wait.
Motion to close that.
I'll make a motion to close it if you'll hear it.
Second.
Motion, any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye. Okay.